Break has concluded. The item that we're currently on is implementation and timeline for proposed constitutional amendments. And this section is open to our membership and is being streamed. Ryan, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, I threw it up on the screen here. You also have in your packets, and I do apologize, your packets have some typos. You're gonna notice a difference in what's on the screen, which is in your packet, but I'll send you a new one at the end of this. There might be changes we make on the fly to this. I don't know, we'll see how the day goes. But this is our draft timeline / implementation plan based on the amended drafts to the Constitution and the 18-month timeline that is currently placed on us. If that separation of powers passes, that's how much time in the Constitution we have to get all of our codes, all the new ones, et cetera, amended and stated. So this we'll go through that. We'll start with what the resolution 2026-01 mandated, kind of a risk mitigation plan. In general terms, the best way to quote, mitigate risk of litigation is to make sure that we have our codes exactly how we want them and reflect accurately the intent of the draft amendments to the Constitution. We're going to highlight a few things where we previously, early on in our discussions with the board, flagged as like low-hanging fruit that would most certainly invite litigation and how we've already attempted to mitigate them. So with a separated government, there's almost inevitably an increase in litigation. It's not a bad thing, it's just a thing that occurs. It can cause an increase in strain on the court system if we haven't built that out to withstand the new litigation. A lot of this is just because the different branches and the citizens are testing the waters on the new codes, the new Constitution, and seeing where the dust settles, so to speak. So we anticipate every time a tribe or any government would separate out to multiple branches, you're gonna see more lawsuits in the first few years, and that kind of evens out after the Supreme Court of the tribe issues rulings and all the branches kind of find their footing. So we'll just keep that in mind as we go through this. Starting with where we have attempted at least to limit the litigation risks. Early on in the discussion, there was still the language in our current Constitution of the 1 in 500, the board seats potentially increasing based on population. In the current draft amendments, we have set that as a static number of 12 board members. So legal had flagged this probably, a year and a half ago when the former legal counsel was working on this with you. That is going to be a low-hanging fruit lawsuit that would most inevitably come. Now that we don't have in our draft amendments that same language that's in our current Constitution that mandates a certain calculation on how many board members are seated on the board, and it's set at that static number of 12 right now, there's unlikely to be litigation regarding that aspect. So you've already mitigated one of the big lawsuits that the legal department had flagged early on in this process. Another one that the legal department had flagged early on as almost certainly to draw litigation without taking any one position from the legal department on the choice of putting Mac-Band in the Constitution. We did flag that because we have so many Mackinac Band members that are enrolled in our tribe and they're not enshrined in the current Constitution, that if we separate it out, we anticipated very quickly one of the first lawsuits would have been something about the Mackinac Band and their membership in our tribe. The current draft per resolution has the Mackinac Band listed, so now it's worded as 7 historic tribes and has Mackinac Band explicitly in the draft Constitution. If it passes in that form, you've eliminated the risk of someone suing on that grounds that we had previously identified.
Rob has a question or comment.
I just want to make it clear that we surveyed the membership on a 1, 2, and 3 branch government, and I think any constitutional change has to come by way of the membership. But we didn't survey the membership on all the other things we added. We only surveyed them on the separation of powers, and I think what we need to do is resurvey the members on everything we added to see if they want it in there. And if they do, then it'll be the last time you hear me talk about it. But this direction didn't come from the membership. It came from this board table. And constitutional reform should come from the membership. Our job is to function with whatever structure of government that our members tell us that they want. So including these things on this amendment is basically telling them you have to accept all this stuff that the board determined for you in order to get the one thing that you were surveyed on. The only thing we know right now that the membership want is a 3-branch government. We didn't check with them on all the rest of these revisions. And I just want to make it clear right now, which is why I presented the original draft with only the extracted components needed to establish a separation of powers. And that's all that was in it. And there's been a lot of talk about how far we've come away from the 2012 draft. And I'm a little bit confused because it's coming from some of the same people that did not support the one that I presented that was word for word what the 2012 draft said. So with all that said, I just wanted to make that part clear, and I will support another survey before we even send this to the BIA to make sure that what we are sending to the BIA is what our members want and not what this board wants. They should have the option of what's included in that amendment. It's their amendment, not ours. The other thing I will say is that I presented it that way so it went from the committee to the BIA. So it was membership driven directly to the BIA. And then we should have waited for their technical review to tell us how to fit it into our Constitution, not have our legislative body do it. I will always, till the end of my days, say that was wrong of us to do. And I did not support it. With that said, the legislative body and the executive, which will be our executive as our chair, had a say on that, and we didn't get the input of the court. Now, I didn't agree with the legislative body or the executive having the input, but I was outvoted. But now that we have had our input, I think we need to have a real sit down with the court and say, each of the branches were able to lobby for what they wanted to see within this amendment based on our current positions, which no one could say that our input wouldn't be biased because we're only aware of what our positions do. We don't know what the court does. None of us really know the functions of the courts inside and out. So before we send this out, now that the legislator and the executive had their input, we need to get input from the court. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll finish the rest. I'll listen to the rest of the presentation, but at the end of the day, it needs to be very clear that these revisions are not of our membership. These revisions are of this board. And I will definitely be bringing something forward to survey the members, so that way when we send this amendment out, it reflects what they want, not what we want.
Okay, Aaron, then Lana.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So, I guess I'm gonna split the baby. Without getting into a full-on sort of conversation about the hypocrisy over the years and the back and forth, and people who joined our board that were officers on the Mackinac Band board in the past. But even before that, the board, in our past, I think Mike correctly schooled me on this issue because I went back and followed it up, and apparently the Mackinac Band was added by resolution, not by an amendment, somewhere in the 70s, around the same time that the Little Travers Band was added for eligibility, but they're not in the Constitution. They're not in the membership code. Mackinac Band is not in the Constitution. They're in the membership code. And, I will agree with Rob to a point, is that he's been correct all along that the board has no authority to add another band as, as a part of our Constitution. The only people that can do that is the people themselves. And so, but having said that, long before some of the members of the board were even born, the board voted to add the Mackinac Band by resolution to the code, not the Constitution. This has been challenged. It was challenged in one of the constitutional amendments in the past by, actually, I won't say because it'll reveal who it is, but by somebody, and that fell flat. There was an attempt to try to say that they should not be permitted to vote on a constitutional amendment in the past, and that's the Mackinac Band. The members that are Mackinac Band descendant in our rolls, they were allowed to vote. The secretary cleared them to vote. So when we get ready to vote on this, the 52% or whatever that number is that are already descended from the Mackinac Band will vote on this issue, just like you or me. I am descendant from Mackinac Band, but my primary blood comes from Sugar Island Band. But I would also say that the Constitutional Convention Committee, when they met and they labored over this for 2.5 years, they did consider adding the Mackinac Band, and they supported adding the Mackinac Band as part of the amendment process to our Constitution. So the thing is, here's where we're at. However it happened, and I do think, and I agree with Rob that it happened improperly, they're members now. And so if we support reconciliation and healing, we should not be supporting trying to get them off of our rolls or claiming that they can't vote. They will vote. The secretary will allow them to vote, and I do believe it'll pass. There are some people who won't vote for it, but I do believe it will pass. And including it might cause some consternation by those groups that that have the best of all possible worlds. They're enrolled citizens of the Sioux tribe. They're enrolled members of the Mackinac Band now too. They're officers. They pick themselves. They never have any elections. They pick themselves to represent the Mackinac Band members. And they may argue that we're doing something that's annexing them or whatever. But I would say the vast majority of the people who are descended from the Mackinac Band that are Sioux tribe members want this to be resolved once and for all. And the way that you do that is you add them to the Constitution. And we're not circumventing the will of the people by doing this, because this is what the committee recommended, and this is what we're putting in front of the people to vote on. And the people of the tribe are not going to be ignored. The people of the tribe are the ones that are going to make the decision. And I do think, especially with 52% of our current citizens being descended from Mackinac Band, they are going to vote to add the Mackinac Band to the Constitution, and then once and for all, we will have resolved it. How we got here, was not proper in the way that it happened, but where we're at now is to correct a mistake that was made by board members long before most of the current board members were even born. 1978, I think Mike Ricurci referenced it, but so that's where we're at. Some will grouse about it, but I'm all for healing and inclusion and once and for all resolving this matter. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, Lana, and then we don't have anyone else on the list and we can keep moving.
Yeah, there's some comments that I agree with that Rob made. The first few meetings I had said, I tried to be keep close to the 2012 draft as we could. And moving forward and along, I had to evolve into if I didn't have input and tried, then I wouldn't have any. And I could sit back and pout that we weren't going to do it, or I could just continue on and do it. So, but one thing Rob did say is that this is definitely not the same 2012 draft that the board or the Constitution Convention Committee brought forward and gave to the board to do something with. So we will say that, we will agree on that. Surveying again, I'm hoping that with our advocacy to have the direct comments from tribal members once they see the final draft on what the board changed. This is a board enacted constitution now. It's nothing to do with the committee. We changed it pretty much altogether. there's things in here that I won on, there's things in here that I lost on, and I think everybody at this table had that same thing happen. So none of us got the same thing. We all didn't win on everything, but I will agree, some things have to be put to bed so we can move forward and unite. But I'll just leave that at that too. But, so I'm looking forward to having that draft up there, and that people have their comment period, and then we'll have that input session, and then we can relook at it again. If it has to come to a survey, because Rob is right, this is not the same thing, not the same thing. And I have talked to many members about it, as this is a big issue right now, for them to speak about. But one thing that Rob said that I don't think is accurate, unless I'm wrong, and I could be, he said before it's sent for an informal review. Aren't we already sending this to the BIA for an informal review? That's my understanding.
So the informal review is happening right now. I think what Rob was referring to was the technical review,
Okay.
which happens after the board would vote to send it to a secretarial election. There's a technical review that's mandated by code and by the federal regulations.
And that's when it comes back to us to review and make changes per that technical review.
Correct. But right now, the BIA has it.
Yep.
They are reviewing it.
Yep.
They haven't gotten us any comments yet, but the informal review process is happening as we speak, and I'm hoping, hopefully this month we'll have some comments, but we're
Okay.
going to get comments back during that process from the feds as
Yep.
well.
And I'm looking for the comments that we get back from the membership with that email that's provided and their input. And we have that discussion and dialogue. Because again, it was either sit here and pout because we weren't doing the 2012, and hindsight is 2020. Maybe all along we should have did that first technical review and send that, but not all of us agreed with it, and all of us didn't agree to what's in this document right here. Even legal didn't agree with some of this stuff. So I just wanted to say that because I said that at the very first meetings, so.
Rob?
So I just want to say, one, I appreciate Lana pointing out the things that we agreed on, because we did agree on from the beginning. But I would also like to say that it wasn't our job to agree on what was presented to us, which is why when I first presented it, I presented word for word what needed to be taken out of the 2012 draft to establish the separation of powers, nothing else. So a couple other things I just want to make sure I'm clear on, because some people have misconstrued my position on the Mackinac Band. For one, I've never been against the Mackinac Band. I've supported the Mackinac Band. What I see is what we did 50 years ago was it wasn't good for the Mackinac Band, because it essentially took their chances of self-governance away, and they have an entire history. The Mackinac Band was huge and powerful, and they were part of the Ottawa Nations, and none of those members, a lot of them don't know that. All they know is that they were Sioux tribe, but I think they should have access to their history too, and they should have gotten recognized to govern themselves. They would have had a massive claim to land, and so I think we did them a disservice by enrolling them. But with that said, I've always stated that I accept the enrolled MAC band members as full-fledged Sioux tribe members, because that is what our leaders did. Whether I agree with the process or not is a whole different story. I don't believe that the board of directors should have any authority to do anything other than what's in the Constitution without going to the members first. That is what I've always been consistent on, is that I believe that the membership should have made that decision. With that said, I think the membership probably would support it. And if you're a member even of the MAC band within the Sioux tribe right now, you would have voting rights, and that's established by the BIA. So the only thing that I've been consistent on here is that I think that decision has to come from the membership, not us. And by us placing it in the amendment, when we only surveyed the members on the separation of powers is disingenuous on our part. What we should have done after the point of going beyond sending this to the BIA with no changes by the board, which is what I preferred. But beyond that, I think what needs to happen is that we need to survey the members to have that placed in the amendment, which I do think they will support. And when it's in there by way of the membership, I won't ever speak about it again. My only argument is that a constitutional change must be initiated by the membership. So that I wanted to make all that clear. I've never been against any band. I support every single tribe and band that is indigenous to our land across the United States, period. I'm always for indigenous people to win. But when it comes to our tribe, I think that allowing the board to do things that are not constitutional even once opens the gate for them to do it over and over and over, which is the exact reason why the separation of powers is so important, because we need a court that can check our constitutionality. And the fact that there was a fear that there would be an immediate court case over there is more than proof to say that everyone else recognizes that the process was probably out of compliance with the Constitution. So my only argument here, and it will remain my argument, is that constitutional changes must come from the membership. And when they do, I will no longer oppose them actions whatsoever. I will support any change to our Constitution that our membership makes, but I will oppose anyone that the board makes. And that's it.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. I feel like everyone's gotten that off their chest, but Ryan needs some possible direction at the end of this, and we're behind schedule. So Ryan, you want to resume?
Yeah, sorry. So just since it's relevant to our conversation, we've had 2 tribal citizens email the Constitution email. It's been live for about going on 3 weeks. So the draft is on our website. It's pinned at the top of the page. And one of the comments was more of a question, and they asked if we're going to be able to vote as citizens on each change when the BIA does the election. We're not. We're going to vote. When they do the election, it's going to say yes or no. Yes, you want all the amendments, or no, you don't want all the amendments. There's not going to be a box for every single change. So this is what the BIA has confirmed in our discussions. It's going to be all or nothing. So that's the way it's set up. Just crash for a second.
We can hear you. Can you guys hear us online?
Yep, I can now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try and share my screen again in a
Yeah,
second.
so once we get back into screen share, we'll keep going with the presentation.
While that's loading, right now in the draft amendments for the tribal records section in the bylaws, it narrows the scope initially to tribal government records. This is in part to protect proprietary information from like Quaden and Enterprise. But the sideboard, the caveat of that is the Constitution draft amendments mandate that within 6 months, the legislature has to create their new FOIA code, which creates the process for when Quaden, Enterprise, any future businesses have to turn over
This meeting is being recorded.
turn over their documents to the tribal government, allowing them to be FOIA-able. I see Rob has a question.
Okay, Rob.
Maybe.
Go ahead, Rob.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, Ryan. I missed something when we lost audio there. And you said there was questions from the membership sent to the constitutional email, and then it kind of cut out after that. So I was just wondering what those 2 questions were.
Oh, okay. One was a very long email with lots of good commentary, and I'm going to compile all these, right, so we can have them for a workshop to go through them. But one of the questions that I brought up, because it's relevant to something you brought up, Rob, was a question came through that email, whether when we go to a secretarial election, whether the citizens are going to be able to vote on each individual change, or whether it's all or nothing. And the way the secretarial election will happen is they will have our draft amendments attached to it, so we can all look at it, and it will ask you a question at the end that basically says, do you approve these changes, all of them, yes? Or do you not approve these changes, no? So it goes to your point about wanting to maybe survey the membership, because when this goes to the BAA election, it's whatever we send them, it's all or nothing. They don't get to say, yes, I like this section, no, I don't like this section, et cetera. It's just, yes, I like all these amendments, or no, I don't like all these amendments.
Okay, then I'd like to request a resolution, Ryan. Would you, please draft a resolution, to direct the legal department, to break down the current draft and extract only what you feel is necessary to achieve a 3-branch separation of powers, and then list individually the changes that the board made, and then structure it as a survey?
Yes, we can work on that resolution.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So back to the.
Tyler, if you don't mind
Sorry.
pausing, Tyler has a question or
Can we
comment.
just do the whole thing that we did and break it down instead of just the separation? Because we just spent 6 months working on this together. So just, if we're gonna do a survey of the membership, I'm fine with that, but we might as well survey everything that we workshopped.
That's what I'm saying, but the membership has already approved a 3-branch government. So that's why I want that obviously separate, because they've already told us in large numbers that they wanted a 3-branch separation. So that part's already approved. I want to survey the membership on anything else the board added. So essentially, yeah, the workshops.
So we had, in the beginning of the year, we had one of our workshops where, or I guess it was towards the end of last year. I pulled out everything that the legal department thought were strictly necessary for just the separation. So if I'm understanding the request and Tyler's comment, the resolution will be worded so the membership will see everything that we say this is necessary for a separation. Like, you need to have these 5 articles, right, for a separation. Here are 5 other articles that throughout the workshops we have tweaked and changed in these ways, and you're asking to survey all 10 articles. That's just a number, a random number.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess you could say required for separation, not required, but suggested changes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then my only, so I have no problem with that. My only concern is the timeline from there. So do we have to adjust Isaac's previous resolution for the timeline? Because we're going to, if we're going to survey the membership, we can't send a document to the Secretary of Interior prior to the survey coming back, and then us accepting those voted in changes. You know what I'm saying? That what is it, May 6th?
May 6th is the current deadline to vote on whether we trigger an election for the secretary.
Right, so if we're going to survey the membership and then discuss about accepting those changes into that petition, will that impact the time? Clearly it's going to, but like, how much more time are you going to need, do you think?
I have no idea. It depends on how long the
And if the
board of
bo-
directors
and
wants
if
to
the
run
board
the survey
votes for a survey.
Yeah. We're kind of, we're in a way surveying everyone now because we're soliciting public comments.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you'd have to decide, if you're doing an actual survey, like online or in paper where they can yes or no on each thing, you got to figure out what timeline you want to put on that. 45 days to 60 days probably would be reasonable,
Yeah.
right?
What do we do for the
And then
first one, do you
that
remember?
would push out our timeline for voting, if you're gonna take that feedback from the current comments that are coming in, plus the survey, plus right now we're doing informal review of the BIA. They have our draft. It doesn't trigger an election. It doesn't mandate that we listen to anything the feds say. It's just their informal review. I wanna make sure we're clear on that. And then you take all that input, the feds input, the workshop input, the tribal citizen input, the survey input, and then you gotta figure out what to do with all the input, and it's gonna push your timeline out, yes.
Isaac?
Hey, Ryan, I do believe we need to do the survey, but my concern would be is, so you got, like you stated, 5 articles that are for the separation of powers, then 5 other articles. So are you gonna put a yes or no there, and who's gonna compile those at the end? And
I mean, if it's directed to legal, I guess we're gonna have to compile them. Like last time, the election commission helped do a paper survey. Right now, we're in the middle of a general election. They probably don't have the capacity.
so
to do
then
that.
when the
Just
survey
a
comes back,
monkey.
you compile it, right?
Right.
So then if there's an article that you think should be in there, and some of us think it should be in there, and it's a no, then we're just gonna strip that out and stick with the articles that are,
I think that's the discussion. So when governments solicit public comment, they don't always change their statute, regulation, et cetera, because of the comments, but they might. And so then we have to have a discussion. Here's all the input, here's the survey, here's the feedback. And then you all will have to poll in a workshop on whether you're going to change something or whether you believe you're going to keep it the same as you originally wanted or somewhere in the middle. So you're not mandated to change things because the survey says our citizens don't like it, but it's a discussion at the board table on what to do with that feedback, just like any other government would do with public comments.
so I'm sure the Mackinac Band's gonna be one of those articles.
It's one that's not strictly necessary in
Yeah.
separation, but it's one that we changed. And so, yeah, it would be one that we'd ask the membership about. Yeah.
Because there wasn't much gripe until that came up, right? I mean, all along.
Right.
I mean, we've been at this for a couple years now, so on and off. I mean, yes, we have. We've talked about this many times, trying to get it on the agenda, and it was well before Rob put it on the agenda.
And I believe that our legal team and the workshops that we've done, we had a lot of good momentum going into changes that you all were compromising on and to get to this current draft form. Is it perfect? Probably not. Is it workable? Probably, right? And so yeah,
Well,
there's a lot of changes that we
I do
did.
support the survey, and I'll co-sponsor it with Rob. The other thing is, we were talking about documentation records. In the current Constitution, it says that any member can inspect any record anytime.
Pretty much, yeah, correct.
Well, that's not true.
It's not true because we've
Because
adopted
I
a
asked
FOIA
for a
code.
report on the expenditures for cultural enhancement funds, and I was told I couldn't get it.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but
Well, I mean, you can see my emails. I mean,
I think what you were told, Isaac, was it was going to take time to compile that. And they
it
would
was
get
not. I was told I couldn't see it,
Right. Well,
so my concern is why are we, I mean, I do understand some of this stuff is confidential, but at some point, every member because we're all shareholders, right, in this big corporation, this tribe, we should be access to any of that information.
you have your FOIA code that you adopted. That's the code that this board at some point put together to implement the
But the
Constitution.
FOIA code don't align with the Constitution.
That's
and
a discussion
what I
about
want-
changing the FOIA code.
That's what I want to make sure that structure does change, so it does align with the Constitution. But I don't want the language to be more stringent in the new Constitution.
Yeah, well, it is. You all pulled this, and this was the majority vote, where it was going to be tribal government records, and then we're going to build out a better FOIA code that mandates when all the business entities have to turn over all their records to the government, and then they become government records, and then they're open to inspection, FOIAble, et cetera. And we also are talking about FOIA on the next workshop, is my understanding, so.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Isaac has a resolution tonight to reallocate the cultural enhancement funds from the Board of Directors to the Lands Claims Fund and then the Cultural Department. But in the event that that fails, I have a resolution on deck for the following meeting to make cultural enhancement FOIAble. So the membership can figure out what we're spending those dollars on, how much we have, that kind of stuff. So I believe that's what Ryan's referring to.
And we've had FOIA requests. Talk to me later, Isaac, about what you were trying to get. But we've had FOIA requests for cultural enhancement, and we've fulfilled them. We don't give out like proprietary information. If we have a request that wants all the list of vendors and the names of people and the personal identifying information, some of that isn't under FOIA, but the numbers of how much was spent by each unit, we fulfilled those requests. Multiple members have done it in the past 2 years, and they've been fulfilled, so. Well, sorry for that, Isaac. You talk to me later.
All right, we can keep going, Ryan. So I think let's have a hard stop of right around 4 o'clock, because we have to review the items that we're going to be voting on today. We didn't have time to do so in the last meeting, and I don't want to do that again. I want to give you guys time to discuss what we'll be voting on. So let's consider 4 o'clock a hard stop on this.
Sounds good. Litigation against government officials. This is something that as we give due process and standing to our citizens to sue for constitutional violations, it's not literally suing the government official, but it's suing them in their official capacity for acts that maybe the citizen or another branch thinks was out of line with the Constitution. This was flagged as maybe increased area of litigation. We do have in the draft amendments that for official acts, government officials, tribal council members, the executive, judges, they cannot be sued. But if they act outside of that scope, or they act negligent, or they violate the Constitution, just like any other separated government, they can be sued in their official capacity as violating the Constitution. So you can't eliminate all that risk, but I think we've created decent sideboards in the constitutional language that clarifies when you can sue and when you can't. Where we still have litigation risk, this is going to be mostly for, probably got to be in the codes as we build them out, but overreach by a governmental branch. If one branch is exceeding their power, the other branches have to be strong enough to come in and change it. If the legislature's overstepping their power, right, we need a strong court that will come in and strike down that law. If the court is overreaching their power, then the legislature needs to have the discussion on whether they need to change their laws to react to that, et cetera. It's just the balance between a government branch. There's not a lot you can do to mitigate it besides just making sure your codes are clear and in line with whatever the constitutional amendments are. It's just something we're flagging because there's going to be increased friction because we're going to have 3 branches instead of just one. That's just a necessary part of separating. It's not a bad thing, it's just a reality. So those two, I'll skip that litigation between branches. I already flagged that above. Just, it's going to be really dependent on how well we build out our codes, make sure we're in line with the Constitution, and creating the proper sideboards. Potential disenrollment litigation, especially if our enrollment codes do not match our Constitution. We've discussed this in different contexts, but having a strong enrollment code and hopefully a strong administrative hearing code can help mitigate some of the litigation in our courts on this. You'll probably see litigation with Open Meetings Act, which will go hand in hand with the legislative process code that the tribal council, once they're a separated legislature, will have to create, making sure it's in line with the intent of the Constitution, not closing down portions of the meeting that maybe should be open, et cetera. So we need to build out stronger FOIA codes, legislative process codes, better Open Meeting Act ordinance, employment rights code. All those things go hand in hand with this section and how you can mitigate that risk. Litigation over process. This refers to if I am trying to get a gaming license and I'm denied, or if I have one and I'm suspended, or maybe my family is dealing with a child welfare case, we don't agree with ACFS's recommendation, or I'm denied for housing. If the codes aren't built strong to clarify how members have standing and what their remedies are, you could see increased litigation just because I'm upset that housing didn't give me a house, which is not, probably sufficient for legal standing, but we have to make sure we build our codes so it's very clear to the courts and to all the applicants and all the citizens on if you're harmed by one of these departments, what are your remedies and how do you prove that you have standing in our court system? So clear civil procedure, administrative hearing codes, those are key. And I think we have strong codes now with the civil procedure. We just make sure that they are in line with any changes to the new constitution when it's enacted, and fleshing out where we think we need to flesh them out. Same thing with litigation against tribal businesses. More specifically, probably the FOIA code. So if we're having citizens are trying to sue the different economic arms for something that they deem is contrary to code or the Constitution, building those sidebars of when we want to waive that sovereign immunity or not, when a citizen can sue the enterprise authority or when they can't, and just making sure it's very clear in all the authority codes, the enterprise, gaming, housing, the FOIA code, the health authority code, if we go that route, civil procedure, and it's just going to be dependent on the code drafting and the legislature enacting the appropriate codes as we go forward. This was flagged from different tribes we've seen separate where the different business entities maybe try to sue the government for what they think is overreach in taxation. The best mitigation is clear and strong tax codes and authority codes and limited waivers of sovereign immunity. All stuff that we will, if we get to that point where we're implementing, all stuff that we will workshop with the board on what our recommendations are to build out those codes and change them as necessary. General lawsuits, frivolous suits, trying to sideboard how we can bring suit as citizens and clear codes on what proper legal remedies are, same as above. But just having stronger language for the courts to be able to dispose of clearly frivolous lawsuits. I think they can already do that now in their power, but just having that enshrined in the different codes that need it. Probably build out even stronger and bigger appellate code, which is something we are workshopping in April with the Court of Appeals. Stuff like that will help mitigate some of these. Done with that section, if there's no questions. Roles, responsibilities, and structures. If it's okay, I'm going to skip through some of this. This is on our website. This was already in a memo that is on the website for the citizens. This was just put it in here again for reference of how the different branches are built. But more important for today's discussion is probably like what entities, committees, commissions, where they're going to fall in this new structure. And I have a better graphic, I think, down here that will summarize it better. So this says, this is key employees, but this will also help show where some of the entities will fall. So we have the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. Of course, the chief judge is in the judicial branch, right? But in the legislative branch, we'll have the board administrator, potentially the chief information officer. There is caveat to that, which we'll get to later. The gaming commission director, the COADIN, CEO and CFO, and the housing director. And so those will all be under the legislative umbrella, and they will be enshrined in their authority codes as they are now. You'll have to talk about if we need to tweak those codes. So the gaming authority, the housing authority, the enterprise authority, those would fall under, in this structure, the legislative branch. They're under the board now. They're created by code. The draft amendments of the Constitution give the authority to the legislature to create these different business entities and their regulations. So the ultimate top of that chain of command will be the legislative branch and then the various authorities. Same with the majority of our committees and commissions. In the draft amendment to the Constitution, the legislative branch has the inherent authority and duty to create these different committees and commissions, so they'll fall under the legislative branch unless the tribal council decides it wants to delegate that to the executive branch. And that in more detail above, but that's the basic outline, so where the committees and commissions will fall. For the government side of things, the executive branch, the general counsel, there's caveats to that, which we'll get to maybe today if we have time. The government CEO, the government CFO, the health CEO, potential caveats, and the tribal registrar. I know they're not a key employee, but they are enshrined in code as being a more or less a direct report to our current board of directors. They can hire and fire the tribal registrar. It's the way the code reads now, so that if it stays that way, then they would fall under the legislative branch, but we're recommending that they should be put under the executive branch. It's an executive branch function. But we flagged it because they are currently under code hired and fired by the board, even though they're not designated as a key employee. I'll pause for a second because that was a quick breeze through of that one.
Okay, any questions, comments here? We keep going, Ryan.
I'm not going to go through the detailed big breakdown of every key employee. I think most of them are self-explanatory, but I do want to flag a couple for us. The Chief Information Officer, this one's a little tricky to decide where to place it in a new structure because the CIO needs to be over all of the entities, at least in the sense that they help with the board right now set the tone and the IT policy globally for all of our entities. So if they're placed under the executive branch solely, it might be difficult for them to have that global reach over all tribal entities. So we think it's probably appropriate to put them somehow under the legislative branch, but that's a policy decision, and we can make it work either way. But this is a position that could fall under either branch. So as we get closer to implementation, this is one of the things that we want to talk about more in depth. There's options if we wanted to create a commission, like an IT authority, or codify the executive steering committee as an oversight of the CIO and IT. We've talked about that in the past. We never implemented that. So this is one we want to have further discussion on. I'll pause for a second. I thought Aaron had his hand up.
Yeah, Aaron, I saw your hand up. Do you have a question or comment?
Nope, I took it down.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, flagging this one because we think it can fall under either of those branches. So supervision would be either tribal council, the OGMA, or potentially an IT commission, IT authority type structure.
So Ryan, quick question. So it mentions branch, legislative or executive. In the original draft that we worked with, what staff did report to the legislative branch?
In the original draft of the Constitution,
Yeah, the 2012 version.
it wasn't really clear. I think for this position, it would probably be under executive in the original branch. There was language in the original 2008 and 2012 draft that created business boards, which are basically our authorities, and those would probably, under the original 2008, 2012 draft, would have fallen under the legislature. This position wasn't really contemplated in that draft, but I think it would fall under executive.
I would agree that it would fall under executive. If the board of directors is going to transition into a purely legislative role, they would do just that, legislate. They wouldn't be in charge of operations on any level. In terms of the oversight boards, what we had previously discussed in those workshops would be that the OGMA's office would nominate certain people to sit on those boards, and then the legislature would confirm them. But in my opinion, that still doesn't mean supervision falls under the legislature.
Right, so this is assuming we don't. So for like the Kuwait and Gaming Authority, the Housing Authority, and the Enterprise Authority, assuming right now that we separate and we don't change those codes, at least right away, the board is the oversight. The board in their capacity as the authorities are oversight of those different key employees. So they would continue in their tribal council capacity if we didn't change it. Our recommendation is to change it, ideally to change it so it's not tribal council and not the OGMA. It's more of an independent business board that runs these things. But I don't know how quickly or if all our tribe transitions to that, but that would be probably what we think is best practice. But if we just separated today tribal council would be over those key employees. And if we didn't change anything else.
Could you repeat that last part?
If we didn't change anything else, any of those codes on the authorities, if we separated today, Kuwaitan.
Because you'd obviously have to
Kuwaitan key
update the codes that are
employees,
being changed. Yep,
Kuwaitan key
absolutely.
employees would be under the Kuwaitan Gaming Authority, which is the tribal council. And this, same thing with enterprise. They would be, the enterprise CEO would be retained under legislative because they are the tribal council. The board becomes the tribal council.
Okay, thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I would just say that we're going to have to go through a transition because it's going to be extremely difficult for the legislative branch to move from, in some cases it's micromanagement. In other cases, it's people who feel like they're advocating for their people and there should be no boundaries on how they do that, to an acceptable structure where the legislative branch is not trying to operate. We hire people as the operators and we post credentials that they have to have in order to do those jobs. And for the most part, lay people don't have those credentials that run for office. But I served on the Wayne State Carl Levin Government Oversight Committee, and there is an incredibly valuable role for the legislature to have in government oversight. And so there's going to be a need for a paradigm shift from the expectation that you can, direct people to come in and answer to you, and start barking out commands to a more respectful approach, which is to say, we wrote the legislation, here's what we intended in the legislation, and how are you accomplishing that? That's a much more reasoned approach that we have to evolve to. So I think, I would not advocate for any positions other than direct report to the legislative branch. So the one thing I think you missed though up there, and I don't know how, because it seemed to me like something you said, Ryan, recently suggested that the legal counsel will have their own counsel, or tribal council will have their own legal counsel, and I do think that's necessary. But I also think that then it becomes a matter of writing laws that protect us against frivolous lawsuits. Because what I've seen happen in tribes is the general counsel for the tribe usually ends up trying to pander to, wherever the 7 votes are. I've seen that for many, many people over the years. I'm not singling anybody out. And then if you have a general counsel for the Ogima and one for the council, I've seen that. At one time, Little Travers was at horrible odds because the council had a legal counsel, the tribal council had a legal counsel who was just constantly trying to undermine the executive branch. But if we do this carefully and we write the laws to what can be legally challenged, and I don't mean to try to filter so we can't challenge things, but the interest of legal counsel is to represent the tribe, not pick sides between the legislative branch and the executive branch. I've seen that happen too many times over the years, and that is a formula for failure. Because I don't think I've ever seen the general legal counsel last when they start playing that game. So you might want to rethink the tribal council having legal counsel. So, and I was going to say it, but I got busy. And then any other administrative functions need to be reporting to the administrative branch, but there needs to be strong legislative oversight, and that comes with legislation. And I think you have that under a subsection 2 there.
Yeah, a lot of this, I know it's a long 16-page memo, but most of it boils down to we need to have really good, strong codes. You're right, exactly. I know we're not going to get through this all today, so hopefully next week is executive reports. Maybe I can use some of my time in open executive report to go through this?
We could potentially alter next Tuesday's workshop to accommodate for you, Ryan, for sure.
So yeah, I'm not gonna ask for any action today, so we'll put a pin in this. Certainly, we can create a structure where even though the legislature creates the authority or a position, they can delegate all the key employees, or whatever we call them in the future, to the OGMA's office. It's just, we're looking at our current structure and the current language of the draft amendment, and if everything passes and we have to work under our current structure for a while, this is how things would fall out, or how they would fall into place. But it's pure, a lot of it is policy decision. Same thing with the legal department, which we'll get to next. So, general counsel and the legal department, right, is another position like the CIO that has to serve pretty much all the branches and different authorities and different tribal entities. I know we've had preliminary discussions at different workshops of where would that position fall? Would it fall under legislative branch? Would it fall under executive branch? I believe it should fall under the executive branch. And right now, the draft amendments to the Constitution do allow both the OGMA and the tribal council to hire legal representation. So how it most often plays out when these tribes separate is the legal department, the general counsel stays with the executive, and then the tribal council gets to then hire an attorney or two, or however many they need, I suppose. And that is how we would advise to do our structure here as well. But we'll have to probably have more in-depth discussion on that and see where the majority of the board thinks on that when we have more time. But these assumptions are working with the general counsel being retained under the executive branch. And so the OGMA appoints that position, the tribal council confirms it. And then we can basically maintain our current structure. We probably have to contract in the future instead, or look at least talking about how our internal service tax works. And maybe it becomes more of the legislature creates a commission and authority, they need legal representation, they somehow have an agreement with the executive branch's legal department to, because the legislative attorney is usually only one for most tribes, maybe it's a couple for our tribe because we're very big, they won't have the capacity to advise all the different branches. So we anticipate that the current in-house structure of the legal department will remain more or less the same and have to advise the different branches, even if they're under the legislative umbrella, and do that by some kind of agreement or contract, which is appropriate because the legislature or the different authorities create the laws, the policies, et cetera, and then the executive branch is the predominant branch that has to implement them anyway. So their attorneys handling those matters would be in line with the structure of a separated government. What the legislative branch right now has the ability, and I do think it's advisable for them to hire probably at least one legislative attorney to help advise them at all their workshops, council meetings, et cetera, on how they want to draft code. A lot of the code drafting might shift eventually from the current legal department towards that legislative attorney. There'll still be some overlap, and the executive branch is going to want to propose code changes as well, even when we're separated. But a bulk of that work with the code revisions and code drafting after we're separated and implemented will likely fall on the legislative attorneys, not the general counsel and their staff. But in the beginning, we anticipate, obviously, with our current structure, our legal department will be helping draft all these codes and code revisions, new codes, et cetera, more or less under our current process, so we can help you all get implemented in a three-branch government. And then we'll have a slowly phase out that and create that better separation once everything's up and running. So I sort of touched on this, but I'll just flag it again. So just for consideration and for more discussion later, whether the executive branch, how many, if any, attorneys they need, what those legislative attorneys will be doing in regards of providing legal advice to different authorities, and the day-to-day legal needs of all of our entities. Our recommendation would be keep it in the general counsel's office. Land and tax office is currently under general counsel supervision. That might be one that could arguably fall under the legislative branch, as they have all the taxing power. My recommendation would probably be keep it where it is, because the executive branch has to implement all the taxes, et cetera. But it's something to discuss. I've seen some tribes where they do have their tax office kind of under the legislative branch. So those are the two positions that I think will need the most workshopping. The rest kind of are self-explanatory where they fall. The judge in the judicial branch, the board administrator would be part of the legislative staff. They'd fall under the legislative and report to tribal council, government CEO, and all that we went through. And then health, I'll scroll down to health quick, because this is one, and James and I have talked about this preliminarily. We haven't had in-depth discussion yet. But in our current structure and potentially in a separated government, I think it's worth discussing whether we want to create more legal separation with our health and maybe create a health authority. That's how we've done the legal separation we currently have is done through housing, COADN, and enterprise authorities. It gives them that legal structure and that governing body then to create their own departments as they see fit. We don't quite have that structure right in health. It's still under the government. So it's worth a discussion, and it's nothing that has to happen right away. It can even be a low priority if we do separate out our government. It's just something to flag, because I think it warrants some good discussion with James and I and the board on what we want to do with health as we're trying to create separation with them, because they're a little bit outside of our current structure. And if we keep it the same, they'll be slightly outside our separated government structure as well.
So Ryan, just a couple things about that. I see the pros and cons of both of them. If we were to create some sort of health board, which would be different than the current health board, it would follow most likely the same process that like the EDC board, the gaming authority would follow. I would nominate, health professionals who are Sioux Tribe members who have an interest in volunteering, and then the board of directors would confirm those people, and they would be helping provide day-to-day operations, the health operations. But I can see the other side of it as well. So yeah, I think it might be something that would be best suited being legislated by the legislature. After all, if we're going to have a legislative branch, that's what they're in existence for. So just some food for thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we flagged it as one of our lower priority code discussion as we implement a separation, but certainly, yeah, we need to talk about it more. I got 10 minutes. Let me scroll down.
What about us getting to talk? You don't have 10 minutes.
How many minutes do I got, Austin? You tell me.
You have 10 minutes.
Okay. Quickly flagging internal services. We need to figure out what we want to do with internal services. As we separate more now, we see different authorities wanting to take over certain functions that are performed by government employees and paid through that internal services tax. So just put a pin in this. In our current structure, we need to talk about it, but definitely if we get to a separated government, we need to talk about how these internal services work, what's the best way for, if COADN needs to use government accounting, what's the best way to do that if they're in different branches and different silos. This is not going to go in depth with any recommendations today. We're just flagging it because we need to have those discussions down the line. So this is all with internal services, which we'll put a pin in for a more in-depth workshop, and I would want Holly there and all the different gaming authority, enterprise authority, CEOs, et cetera there, so we can have that discussion. Sioux Tribe Inc., we don't see any significant impact with the way they would structure. It can more or less remain the same as it is. One thing to consider maybe with the Sioux Tribe Inc. quarterly reports, they go to the board now. Do we want them to go to the legislative branch solely? Do we want them to go to legislative and executive branch? Because there'll probably be dual oversight of it. But for the most part, they can continue to operate as they are. So not a lot of changes will have to happen there. We do believe probably as we separate out and have to change our key employee structure or executive structure, probably a new method of hiring and firing will need to be implemented. We are advising maybe an appointments code that further fleshes out the authority of the OGMA to nominate and the legislator to appoint. And you can probably have in there what would trigger the need to maybe remove someone from that executive position. But the straight 7 to hire, 7 to fire might not work across the board for every executive going into the future. Again, we don't have recommendations on how to change it yet, but those will come as we start drafting code revisions. Just something to put in your head now. To Aaron's point earlier, things are going to look different. There's going to be growing pains, and this is one of the things with the executives that are going to have to just look different. We can't operate quite the same way. So I'll just flag right now, code and policy. Well, it's code. The policy amendments we don't have in this draft. We asked the different entities whether they felt like any of their policies would have to drastically change, and by and large, we didn't receive any feedback that thought their policies would have to change. So right now, we're going to focus on the code changes. Those are most imperative. And then as code changes, we'll review what policies might need to be tweaked as the codes change. But doing the policy changes before we finalize code would be backward anyway. So this is focusing on the codes that need to be created and or amended. And we have them listed as high priority, middle priority, and low priority. So the high priority ones that we would want to have ready to go on day one or sooner, if possible. The elections code, chapter 10 and 12. The parliamentary rules, which become the legislative process code, is something that needs to be ready as soon as we're a separated government. The FOIA code is mandated to be within 6 months of enactment of the draft amendments. That has to be implemented, so that's a high priority. Same thing with removal from office. That's a code that the draft amended constitution mandates within 6 months you have that code ready to go. And we also flag waiver of tribal immunities, the tribal court and the appeals code. Make sure all of our codes that govern the court are in line with the new constitution. We want to bring back the administrative hearing code, which we've brought forward off and on over the years. An employment rights code, now that there's going to be more explicit enshrinement of those employment rights in our Constitution. We should have some kind of tribal employment rights code, right, to flesh it out, make sure everyone's on the same page on what their rights are and how they can sue if they're violated. Ethics, code of conduct, conflicts of interest code, impeachment provisions. It doesn't have to be its own code. It might fit under the appointments code, but maybe some kind of impeachment process for government officials. And then whistleblower code. We've talked about that off and on over the years, but there are whistleblower protections in the amended draft constitution, so you want a code that further elaborates and defines what that would look like. So those are the high priority codes that we would need to do sooner than later in that 18-month time frame. The middle priority, membership, juvenile code, tax, criminal and civil procedure and offenses, evictions, civil remedies, and the authority codes. We flagged, we don't have to call it this, but an Office of Management and Budget Code. Maybe we need some kind of code that governs better the budget process for all of our different entities as we separate. And then, per our discussion earlier, potentially a health authority code down the line. And then an IT commission code if we need to structure the CIO differently or want to structure them differently. Low priority, liquor control, barring individuals from tribal land, Tribal Environmental Protection Authority, and then just general code cleanup. As we have a new constitution and new constitution language, we just have to go through and make our codes uniform to that constitution. And those are the codes that we flag now that we would want to work on. And then underneath that, we have our phased approach where we break down. This is assuming we just start on day one of the separation and have that 18 months. We can start sooner. Hopefully we do start sooner. But we've broken down what we think is the best priority for that 18 months in terms of getting things passed by the legislature. And you're looking at doing 2 codes per month, so you got to move quick, and you can't have a ton of workshops on them. So the legislature's going to have to move quick. You're going to have to rely a lot on your in-house counsel to be quick and efficient. Because unless we change the 18 months that are currently in the draft amendment. And other tribes have done it in a similar time frame, but it is a time crunch, so we have to be very efficient with our time. So the first 3 months, we have elections, tribal court, legislative process, FOIA, removal from office, and appeals. I think those we believe are very imperative to have up and running sooner than later, as we start having more potential of more lawsuits with both from different branches and from tribal citizens as exerting their right under the new amendments. Then the next 3 months after that, waiver of tribal immunities, referendum, admin hearing code, appointments code, employment rights code, the ethics codes. Then going down the next 3 months after that, impeachment, whistleblower, juvenile, criminal and civil procedure, and jurisdiction. Following that, membership, eviction, civil remedies, housing authority, enterprise authority, gaming charter authority. And we can workshop how we might want to switch these around. These are just our initial recommendations based on how we see things playing out and what we believe are most important to get up and running first. But obviously, these are all important. I mean, they need to get them all up and running. But having the code with the court, how they need it and how we need it, is very important. More so than having the enterprise authority. They can function as they do now, and we can change it later. So that's why they're down lower in the order. Next 3 months, tax, OMB, health authority code, IT commission code. Tax on their choice. Conservation committee, and then finally liquor control, bar and individuals, tribal environmental protection, and then just the general cleanup of terms. And that's kind of our initial outline of how we see those 18 months going with getting all the codes we need adopted and revised.
All right, anything else, Ryan?
No, we can talk about this later, but we also have stuff further down that we can talk about it on Tuesday. What we can start doing now, in the next 9 months that we have of this year, and we can go in more depth later, but I can flag them real quick. We can work on it now, we're already working on it. Tribal court and appeals codes, FOIA code, criminal procedure, criminal offenses, civil jurisdiction, administrative hearing code, juvenile code, and evictions and foreclosures. We can start drafting those now if we want, in line with our intent of the draft constitution. It goes to Aaron Payment's reso that he sponsored that wants to maybe legislate some of the separation. We can do this now, and we can use the draft amendments as our template for how to structure those codes. And we can start creating the codes necessary and implement them now if we want, and create through legislation that separation while we continue the process with the BIA. And those are the ones that we flagged that if we want to, and over the next 9 months, let's workshop them now. Some of them we're doing now with the Court of Appeals, and we can do the rest if the board desires.
Okay, I appreciate it. So I'm going to give the attendants who are here the opportunity to give comment. So who'd like to go first? Come on up, Janet, then Sheila, you'll be up next. After these two ladies are done speaking, we'll take a little recess, and then we'll start with agenda review.
Thank you, Ryan. That's a lot of work. First, I'm going to say, I want a survey coming to my house. I want to be able to answer questions of what I want as a tribal member. And I'm sure there's a lot of tribal members that feel the same. I don't feel like I should have to go out and fill out an email and send it to you. Those questions, as we are the tribal members, you need to address us personally. Let us come to you. You bring that stuff right to us and let us make those decisions. That's how it works. For some reason, I think everybody forgot who they're elected by. You're elected by the people. So make sure you're asking and giving the opportunity to your people. It's not about you. And then my next question is, that's a whole lot of stuff. How are we going to afford all that? Because the only thing I keep sitting back there seeing is cutting service. There goes more service. There goes some more service. Because that, what you're creating, is going to cost a lot of money that we don't have. Which brings me to my next point. If it's gonna cost us that much money and your jobs are really changing up, how much do we really need to pay you? Can we put that in the Constitution too? And ask that question, how much do we actually value for? Because I didn't see that come up either. You know, inquiring minds really want to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Sheila, you're up.
Thank you. So, I'm kind of confused, not in a regular,
This meeting is being recorded.
We lost internet, Sheila,
that's
The
okay.
recording has stopped.
but there was no one in the weight room trying to get in on
That's
Zoom
okay.
to
You know, I
talk
don't
or
even
anything.
care, because
Yeah.
I'll tell them if they ask me what I said. So, here you go. So, is the constitutional amendment meetings going to be a separate meeting, or is it always going to be combined with a regular board workshop?
You guys get my question? Any
This
question?
meeting is being
It's been
recorded.
combined, but I mean, I'm open to suggestions, so.
From a membership standpoint, I don't want to have to sit out there because you're closed past the time that you're supposed to be open, okay? I understand your time is valuable. So is mine. May not seem like it, but my time is valuable. I do not want to sit out there for, let's see, today I was out there for about an hour. So that's the other thing. I'd like to open this up for just the Constitution, so we can, as members, not wait till the end and take scribbly notes, but like to interject so it can be met right now. Okay, you're discussing this, here's the membership point of view. Okay, and if somebody can really get back to me and explain to me why we're doing this when the BIA already has a draft, I'm confused. I don't know what draft they're looking at. And I don't know why we're here tweaking the draft to resend to the BIA. Are we planning on sending the amended draft to the BIA? Then what do they have right now? I think the membership deserves an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. We appreciate it. All right, everyone, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll jump into agenda review. What I propose doing is shifting around the resolutions that we discuss first. That way we cover the controversial ones first so we don't run out of time, and then we can drift towards the more mundane ones. So 5-minute break, guys. Let's go ahead and have a seat. We're going to go ahead and begin with agenda review. So let's cover the controversial resolutions first that might require more discussion. That way we don't run out of time on what we really need to discuss. So with that, let's discuss Isaac's resolution. So it's titled, let's see here, a resolution to allocate a portion of hotel tax revenue to the Tribal Land Claims Fund and to cultural education and enhancement purposes. So I have his resolution in front of me. So we would need to amend this to change every reference of 2.5% down to 2. Isaac made a grammatical error. So if I'm reading this correctly, it would, the hotel tax would remain at 5%. So if you stay at one of our hotels, you'll continue to be taxed at 5%. However, 3% of that would go to the Lands Claims Fund to potentially increase individuals' elder checks, and then the remaining 2% would go to the Language and Cultural Department to manage cultural workshops in the different units, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't know why you phrased it as controversial, though, because I don't think it is. But anyways, so that we have an obligation to pay back a loan that we haven't even made a step towards, very minimal. And then the other thing is, from my understanding, each unit, cultural unit gets $7,500 a year to do culture events. Well, that's very limited resources for the people that we have out there. And I think it would be better managed that the culture department's distributing those funds accordingly.
All right, any questions, comments on this before we move on to the next one? Rob?
Yeah, I have a lot of comments, but I'm gonna save some for the meeting. It's probably no surprise that I support this. I think that the way that cultural enhancement funds are dispersed and spent right now is against the Constitution. We're not giving proper notice to our members how we're spending them, and we're not doing it in an open meeting. And our Constitution's pretty clear that when we spend money, our members need to be notified properly within 5 days, and it needs to be voted on at the board table in an open meeting. So I will support any legislation to move these funds to a more proper department, and I don't view this as taking anything away from culture, because the 2% will go back into the culture department, and the 3% will go to the lands claim fund, and there is nothing more cultural than taking care of our elders, because it's one of the first things we learn. So that is definitely in alignment with our culture and proper use of these funds, and I will support them.
Okay, Kim Gravel.
Okay, I think Rob just answered my question. I was going to ask if this money would be taken anything away from any other membership services, but it sounds like it's not. Correct?
No, you're correct, Kim. This only deals with the cultural enhancement funds, which is the 5% hotel tax.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so let's move on to the resolution before that, seeking approval for snowmobile trail on the Keldon property. So I sponsored this along with Director McKechnie. I can speak on it real quickly. So we've been asked for at least a year now to grant an easement to a local snowmobile club to allow snowmobilers to go through the Keldon property, of which we own. Right now, the property really isn't being used for anything. I think a couple tribal members hunt there in the fall. I don't believe it's being used for anything in the wintertime. So my support is contingent on this starting next year, not this year, so we can put up the appropriate fences along with signage, just to make sure that no one leaves the designated areas. But if you go up there right now, chances are there's snowmobile tracks on that property because it's already being used for that purpose. The property, I believe, on both sides, or at least one side, is owned by the state of Michigan, and I believe the DNR has offered a similar easement, but this is on a trial basis. If we try it for a winter, and if no one has any respect for our property, then I'd be perfectly happy with rescinding it, but I don't see the problem, giving it a chance. I know that migratory birds use that property, but not in the wintertime when that pond's frozen over, so I'm willing to give it a shot. Isaac, do you want to contribute to this?
Yeah, the other thing is, it's a tribal family that's requested the easement, so they have a business out that way, and they'd like snowmobiles to be able to access their business, so I don't see anything wrong.
Okay, any other questions, comments here? Mike?
Did our environmental program get a chance to like review this to see what kind of impact? I understand you're saying, hey, the bird thing's not an issue during winter, but I'd feel more, if we have an environmental department, we might as well get their seal of approval on these types of
So
activities.
Danny is here, and so is Ryan, but if we could start with you, Ryan, just explain how the easement would work. It's wetland, but in the wintertime, you know, where the snowmobiles would go through, it'd be frozen. But we purchased wetland elsewhere that we're gonna preserve as wetland, like that 500-some acres on Sugar Island. So if you wanna talk about it, and then I can ask Danny?
Yeah, so just speaking from the legal perspective, we had our land and tax office look into this with whether we thought there might be any holdup with a BIA easement due to the wetland issue. We don't think, from our research and some correspondence with the BIA, it doesn't appear there's going to be any kind of issue from the federal end if we need to get a BIA easement. We won't know 100% until we actually, if this resolution passes and we have like the formal discussions. But from everything we looked at from the legal standpoint, not going to comment on whether there's concerns from NRD, but it does appear that we'd be able to do this legally speaking without any kind of, we had talked about maybe we have to trade wetlands, like we have these over here and we swap them. None of that will probably come into play. It's likely we can just do the easement here. There might be some small mitigation efforts that we need to put in that the BIA might have insight on, but other than that, it looks like the legal process would be pretty simple from what we can tell right now with the feds.
Okay, Danny, then Lana, if you guys don't mind? Okay, go ahead, Danny.
Hi, everyone. Chairman Lowe's, I think the fencing and signage is a good idea. My concerns were primarily on I believe the trail currently, and I know it's not official yet, goes right on the berm that's kind of holding the wetland in place, and we wouldn't want to see any erosion of that. We don't want to see any spread of invasive species, and you know, if there was a fuel spill of any sort, that could be an issue. However, if folks are maintaining their equipment and staying on the trail and we've got signage up, I think this is reasonable. Again, deferring to Ryan and legal on the easement portion of it. And then further, if there are opportunities down the line with new utility corridors to shift where the snowmobiles are and get them off the berm a little bit, that would be my recommendation.
Okay, I appreciate that. And before I call on Lana, if this were to pass, would you be agreeable to lend a hand just to help whoever is installing the snowmobile fence that it's in the appropriate location to cause minimal environmental damage?
Yeah, I think we could get out there during the growing season too and just make sure that all makes sense for both the snowmobilers and the wetland.
Okay, appreciate it. Lana?
Actually, I wanted to hear what you had to say about it, and I appreciate your input, and I appreciate you being there. But this wouldn't give any, because you had mentioned, you know, any kind of swap or anything. This would just give the actual authority to work with signing and fencing for that purpose, right, Ryan?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Kim?
Yeah. Would there be any like insurance issues? Someone got in an accident on our property?
Ryan, hey, point of information, we currently do it with the trail right behind here, so I don't think you require them to have insurance.
I would agree the Christmas Casino has snowmobile traffic constantly up there too.
Yeah, there's quite a few. That
Okay, so it's never been a problem then?
It's not been a problem with the other areas that have those trails, and I didn't specifically talk to our insurance director about that, but I don't foresee that being an issue, no.
Thank you.
Ryan, do you think sovereign immunity would come into play as well?
Yeah, likely. If there was an attempt at some lawsuit, that would definitely come into
I would agree as well. Yep. Anyone else on this? All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Tyler, you want to cover your resolution protecting tribal artisans from artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I asked Ryan to do this towards the end of last year based on several tribal artists reaching out to me. Basically just protecting the American Indian Arts and Craft Act. protecting native created artwork. There's a lot of uses of AI. There's no regulation really yet. I just think the tribe should take a stance, at least in the artist depiction of it, and protect our native arts and crafts vendors from the use of AI. If the tribe is going to outsource material or create material that has tribal art, we should be paying our own artists, not using artificial intelligence. That just upholds the act that we fought for. I believe it was back in 1978, along with the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. And this can be a start of at least our own internal regulation until national regulations start taking place. But I think this is a good start because the American Indian Arts and Crafts Act is really important to, everything else would be native inspired work. But when we create it on our own, it is actual native art. So just been seeing more and more of it across social media. We're seeing some decals printed off of it in various locations. Don't want to call out any single department or people. I just think we need to figure out something to get it in place as a tribe as a whole.
Okay, very good. Aaron?
Well, I support it 100%, and I'm glad Tyler brought it forward. I think the Indian Artisans Act was 92 maybe. I was working as a policy analyst for the tribe then when we submitted a resolution in support of it. The one thing that I hope that maybe we could impose the requirements of the current law as well, because we sell cheap crap from China at some of our gift shops. Every once in a while, when you're not looking, then you look over there and you see these fluorescent dream catchers. We should not ever be selling any crafts that are not made by Indians, authentic tribal members. And we should probably limit it to just Sioux tribe members so that they get an opportunity to make their sales in our gift shops. So I support this.
All right, anybody else?
1990.
All right, so that concludes this resolution. Now let's start from the top. There's several resolutions that we skipped because we had already previously workshopped them. So the first one that we'll cover is FY 2026 Budget Document 002, Schedule B Budgets. Jen? And then we're going to be working our way down. Nothing above that is going to be covered.
First up, we have Schedule B, which is 42 cost centers that we presented last week to the board. They start September, I think there's like 4 that start September, and the remaining started October 1st.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, let's move on to the one below that then, Jen. That would be 2026 Budget Document 003, Schedule C Budgets.
Schedule C budgets, there's 142 cost centers that started January 1st that we're seeking approval for, and those were workshopped again last week and reviewed with the board.
All right, any questions or comments here? So we've workshopped all of these, sometimes more than once. That's probably why you're not seeing any hands go up. Board members will also have the opportunity to discuss them during the meeting. So let's move on to the next one, which would be FY 2026 Governmental Capital Expenditures.
This one we did not review last week with the board of directors. It's a total of $2,001,284. Of that, $1,008,284 is coming from tribal support. I do have Bill Travitz here for IT and security. I have Bill Martin and Andrew Lane for construction and buildings.
Right,
So
awesome.
if you want, Bill Travitz his is all tribal support, the rest is fund balance. I don't know if you want me to screen share, it should be in your packet. And he can explain by all means more than I can on this, so I will hand this over to him.
Does anyone need screen share? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. Bill, if you could explain this, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, be glad to. This is, we just have a few line items here. FortiGate main firewalls, that's the main firewalls that go into the health facility and into the casino, which basically is how all the traffic to our internet gets transited in and out. excuse me, those are out of support, the ones that we have, and we're just replacing those. This is part of routine maintenance, but it's a pretty high number. So we were also able to get some pricing reductions below this for this year, so that might not end up getting spent all the way out. Storage, we have a bunch of storage that we use for backups, and since we're as we phase through 26, we're going to continue to have that internal need for storage, and this is the replacement of devices that are past end of life, to make sure that we're having proper backups and so on. Wi-Fi study, that's the thing that I've mentioned in some of my executive reports. Those are basically repairing everybody. It's no secret that our Wi-Fi can be sketchy at times across the, like for example here at the Coyden property and all. And so that's to have a professional organization come this year and do a study and give us RF coverage paths and things of that nature, heat maps. Shield software, that actually is kind of misnamed. That actually has to do with part of our Zero Trust effort and being able to provision what are called secure access workstations. Not a big number, but above the threshold and in the CapEx side. Pen testing, we're undergoing one of those now. We do those annually. Last year, we allocated $50,000 for that. We're just adding $50,000 to do it again every year. And that's how we determine if our security infrastructure on the inside of the tribal network, as well as coming in from the outside. And that's an annual expense that we have to take on. The two items that you see, the last two, they're under 8527, is 24/7 security.
Did the sound cut out?
Sorry? No, it's still on, Aaron. You keep going, Bill.
Okay. So those two items go hand in hand. We are, I've mentioned in the executive reports to the board that we are looking to put up a 24/7 security operations center, which would be a third-party company, which would monitor everything coming into our security infrastructure and be able to alert us overnight when IT staff are not here on premises to be able to look at it. Those two pieces are the monitoring and security software is like a subscription to that service for the year, and then the actual implementation is the first time implementation of that SOC. And one of the really great things about doing this is they're going to come in and assist our team, which we do not have the expertise in-house to do cloud-based Zero Trust. So this is the opportunity to have them come in and help us set that up. And then as part of a ongoing process, they're going to be training us and working hand in hand with us so that we develop the expertise here with our internal IT. So there's quite a number of members who are on the IT team. So really excited about that. So any questions? That's it for us.
All right, any questions? I appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions from those other gentlemen, or are we good to move on? I just have a stand. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, mine's not necessarily for Mr. Taver, it's probably for Holly. Every year, we do capital expenditures, and every year we ask that they are prioritized, and every year, I meant to email and ask if there's a priority on these. There's not, and I forgot to email, so it's no big deal, but the 2025 capital expenditures, were all those completed? I don't, yeah, you are not going to have to look right now. I mean, but I'll come back there later on, but I know that we had a problem in the past where we would, that's why we asked to prioritize them to see what we needed and get through those first, and then we found out later that some of them weren't even completed the prior year, and they were on the list again. So I just want to make sure that's not happening, and I would like to see that our 2025 was all exhausted and everything was taken care of, and none of those duplicates are on this same list. So that'll be my question, and I'll come back and get an answer a little bit later. And that isn't for you, that's for in general of the whole process. Thank you.
I just put in a board concern, and I'll give you a written response on that.
Oh, perfect, okay.
All right, so I don't see any more hands up, so we'll move on to the next resolution that we're going to be covering, which is Continuing Funding Authority, Governmental FY 2026, Schedule B Budgets, No Health Division.
This resolution is only needed if you don't approve Schedule B. That was just, I said there's 42 budgets. That will only need this if that is not approved. Same
All
thing
right.
with the next one for
Understood,
Schedule
everybody?
C.
Okay, so we will skip that one then.
Schedule C is the same thing. Schedule A, I will need that one read in just because we have 6 cost centers that will have budgets that start April 1st, and I mentioned that this morning when we met.
Okay, understood. So that brings us down to continuing funding authority for fiscal year 2027, April to March, is that correct? Okay, all right, if you could cover that, please?
Yep, that is the one I just mentioned. It has 6 cost centers that start April 1st of 26 and end in 27. And we, as noted earlier today, is Schedule A is with the executive staff. This is the first time in a bit. It only has one cost center that used to get tribal support. They did not budget for tribal support, but we're just looking for approval for the 6 for a CFR until we bring Schedule A back.
Okay, wonderful. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to NRD application to Accelerating Natural Climate Solutions Program.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danny Fagan. I'm the Division Director for Natural Resources Division. With this resolution, we're seeking approval from the Board of Directors to apply to the Allen Family Philanthropies Accelerating Natural Climate Solutions in the United States program for up to $1 million for a 2-year project to build on our hemiboreal forest work, including actions like planning for fire stewardship, climate-smart forestry, and integrating Indigenous knowledge into those actions.
Thank you, Danny. Any questions, comments here? I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next up would be a couple from Helen Wilkins. The first is residential land lease cancellation, and then following that would be residential land lease Joshua French. The cancellations for Rittenhouse.
Hello, Helen. Helen, I'm loud enough as it is. Helen Wilkins, Director of Commercial Real Estate and Property Management. These 2 resolutions are in request to cancel a land lease out in Kinchelo. Mr. Rittenhouse has passed away and his property is being sold. And the new one would be the next resolution, and that's who will be taking on that property to improve it.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Any questions on either of those? So I'm going to ask you guys at the meeting, does anyone have any objection to Helen presenting first? I believe you have a grandson? Son that has a hockey banquet, and she wants to get out on time for that. So any objections? All right, so we'll handle you first, Helen. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. All right, next up would be authorizing amicus brief in treaty fishing case with Ryan Mills.
All right, there is an ongoing case. It's been ongoing since 2018 or 19. State of Michigan v. Caswell is the case. It involves a Mackinac Band member not enrolled in Sioux Tribe. And the Court of Appeals recently made a decision that appeared to potentially grant Mackinac Band treaty rights, but didn't follow the proper standard of the federal standard needing to determine whether a tribe has treaty rights. The legal department is requesting permission to file an amicus brief that can help guide the Supreme Court of Michigan, there's an appeal pending from the state of Michigan appealing up to the state Supreme Court to help guide the state Supreme Court on the proper analysis when determining whether there is a tribe that might have federally reserved treaty rights. We have a draft that we have completed, and we've circulated it to all the other Cora tribes, the 5 tribes that have treaty rights in Michigan, to see if they'd also want to join. If the board approves us filing the amicus, we'll either file it on behalf of Sioux Tribe, or we might file it collectively with Little Traverse, Grand Traverse, Little River, and Bay Mills if they join.
Okay, appreciate it. And this is something that we discussed at a couple different workshops. Any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none, that brings us to the last resolution that we'll be voting on this evening, which would be rescind resolution 2024-54, waiver for American Wagering, Inc.
So this is the waiver of sovereign immunities that the tribal government put in place when we switched our online gaming partner from Wynn to Caesars Entertainment. We had to do a limited waiver of sovereign immunity to enter into that agreement and get the license and everything for internet iGaming with Caesars. The tribe is transferring their iGaming license with the Michigan Gaming Control Board from the tribal government's name into the Kuwaitan Gaming Authority's name. The tribe has already transferred all its rights and obligations over to Kuwaitan. Kuwaitan has accepted those rights, has done their own sovereign immunity waiver, has done a resolution under their authority to enter into the agreement. And now that those pieces have fallen into place, I'd like the tribal government to rescind its waiver so any potential legal liability rests solely with Kuwaitan Gaming Authority.
So this one's pretty simple. You had to waive sovereign immunity on the government side when you did business with Caesars. Now that that license has been transferred to the government side, you don't need to have that waiver in place, so we're just rescinding that. Aaron?
Well, I just wanted to, I have a question, but, so this one's really been politicized online, I think, to try to affect how board members vote. And it's been suggested that doing this will somehow prevent the tribal board from being able to allocate the revenues for the benefit of membership services. Is that true?
That is not true.
Yeah, so this is just to
Okay.
take away the waiver. That's
Yeah,
all.
so the iGaming revenue right now has been allocated by the board towards Kuwaitan for different purposes. In the future, we can discuss with Kuwaitan how we want to reallocate that if necessary, but it would not preclude the tribal government from having those discussions and determining where to properly allocate those funds in the future.
And who are the members of the Kuwaitan Gaming Authority?
They are, it's populated by the board of directors in a different capacity.
So with that explanation, does any board member have a question about how that might limit your ability as either a board member or a gaming authority board member to ensure tribal priorities are funded? All right, thank you.
All right, guys, that concludes all the resolutions. So now let's move on to new business. First up, committee appointments, resignations. So you guys all have the sheet in front of you. Bud Byron seeking resignation from the Unit 1 Elder Subcommittee. In the Unit 3 Elder Subcommittee, Del Powers is moving, so he's seeking to resign. Carol Colgrove is seeking appointment. In the Unit 4 Manistique Elder Subcommittee, Phyllis Smith is seeking to be appointed. And then Del Powers would have to also resign from the Elder Advisory Committee. Any questions or comments on any of these? All right, perfect. So that concludes everything except board concerns. We might as well just wait until the meeting for them. So with that, we'll be on recess until 5 o'clock. And I'm assuming that the majority of the board wants to wait until next Tuesday to cover the Indian Energy stuff. Am I mistaken? Okay, so next Tuesday we'll handle that. All right, so we'll be on recess until 5 o'clock. It is 5 PM, so I'm going to go ahead and call this regularly scheduled meeting to order. We'll start with roll call, please.
Michael McCurchie.
Here.
Kimberly Gravel.
Here.
Sean Borowicz.
Here.
Aaron Payment.
Here.
Tyler LaPlante.
Here.
Bridget Sorensen. Isaac. All right, excellent. Isaac McKechnie.
Here.
Lana Cosley Smith.
Here.
Rob McRory.
Here.
Kimberly Lee.
Here.
Kimberly Hampton.
Here.
Larry Barbeau.
Here.
Austin Lowe's.
Here. All right, everyone, we have a quorum. On today's agenda, we have the following items. We have invocation, membership participation, the approval of minutes from 2/17/26, and the following resolutions. ACFS USDA established FY26 budget, health ARPA maintenance FY26 budget modifications, health emergency prep FY26 budget mods, health admin FY26 budget mods, FY26 budget document 002, Schedule B budgets, FY26 budget document 003, Schedule C budgets, FY26 governmental capital expenditures, CFR governmental FY26 Schedule B budget, no health division, CFR government FY26 Schedule C budgets January to December, CFR FY27 April to March, NRD Climate Solutions Program, Residential Land Lease Cancellation Rittenhouse, Residential Land Lease Joshua French, authorizing amicus brief and treaty fishing case, rescind Resolution 2024-54, waiver American wagering, protecting tribal artisans from AI, approval for snowmobile trail on Keldon property, hotel tax revenue to tribal land claims/culture, and under new business, we have committee appointments/resignations along with board concerns. Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Any discussion on the proposed agenda? Hearing none, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries. So before we move on to invocation, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Mickey Frechette. He recently passed on. Miigwech. All right, next up we have invocation with traditional medicine with Gerard.
Blow it out real fast. There we go. That'll do. That'll keep it going.
I have to come back.
Oh, you won't have to come back. Believe me, you won't have to come back. Nahabuju min wa mamagain inch kabeus mamagain sagaski Jesus. Mamagain ojibwe chipwan nindaga winigi ayek mamagain minidoga winigi nunda sugo mam sugoying. This past week, I had these guys can sit down, you just make me nervous. Make me feel important. I don't want to feel important ever. But this past week, I had a chance to go celebrate 100 years with my teacher, February 24th, 1926. And he likes watching The Price is Right. And he likes watching the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think that's the secret to longevity. But we were sitting around and they had the first bunch show up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. and they had the second bunch show up about 5. So the first bunch was community members and just people that came in, and the evening part of it was pretty dignitary. Premiers and federal politicians and First Nations chiefs. And they had wild rice pudding, and they had venison, all that stuff. And I was really surprised because I was just being a Shkabaivas. I was just helping out. Me and my daughter were just helping out. And actually, I was getting ready to come back here. And Marcia, the oldest daughter, says, before we start this evening, he doesn't know this yet, but we've asked Gerard to do the opening. They kind of caught me off guard. So what I said to him was, all the time that I've ever hung around his kids, they always just talked about being with their mom and dad. And then when you talk to his grandkids, you'll say, what's the best part of going to school? And all of them would say, going to Papa's after school, jumping off the school bus, going to Papa's. And I quite often think about that because of all the adults in all the communities celebrating 100 years on Earth, and it was right next to the community daycare, the only kids that were running around there was his great-great-great-great-grandkids. All the adults left their kids at home. So it's good to see the young people here. It's good to see seeing them get a learning. And I know that there's what they call adult allies, if you want to call them teachers, that work with them. And I often think about generational care, generational territorial care, however you define care. And when we begin to abandon a lot of the things that we're given, that's when we get misaligned in the snowbanks or misaligned in the slush. Sugar bushes are starting to fire up. Everybody's getting ready for the boil. Everybody's catching perch. Everybody's catching pickerel. Everybody's catching lake trout. And spring is ready to come, and it's been a long winter. And at the beginning of this meeting, we honored somebody that's beginning his next journey. And ever since probably this territory was ever established with an Anishinaabe, we've all had those send-offs, I guess. We're constantly reminded about only camping here, and our final camp is when we leave here. So I wanted to share that with us about longevity and the beauty that's following that longevity. And in between, there's health care, and there's spirit care, and there's mental care, and there's emotional care. And sometimes we abandon one of those cares or all of those 3 cares until we really need them. So it's like the tobacco. It's like Shkabe Sagaski Jesus. How often do I say that? And I shared this with a client this morning, is I probably share that about maybe 10 to 12 times in a day, every day. So when I wake up, when I go into work, when I meet clients, and when I go to bed, And when I walk off the floor over there at the casino, I say, dang, that doesn't work. Just kidding. But those are the things to be mindful of, is there's a pride or a proudness in all of us. And in that pride and in that proudness, there is a set of parents from both sides of our moms and dads, known as our grandparents, that have a proudness for us, whether it's a spirit proudness or whether they're still around, a spirit, physical presence of proudness. And then when we see little things accomplished, that's a big proud. We might never come home with a doctorate, but some of us will come home with a C grade. That's a proudness. And in understanding that is there's a humbleness that we have to come back to. And to me, I applaud each and every one of you. And to me, I honor and applaud everybody out there too. I'm always in that. And people say, do you ever let it down? And I say, no. People can talk trash about me. And I won't get down. I won't go to that level. And I think what happens in a lot of that is there's a pride in us that's unnameable. You can't describe the pride or you can't describe the proudness that we have as an Anishinaabe. All the things that are going on in the world today is the greatest fear to a genocidal governance is an Aboriginal human being to their land holding on to their medicine. And I shared this a little while ago, about 2 hours ago. I was talking to somebody on a Zoom about how powerful we are with tobacco in our hands, and how powerful we are around a little bit of medicine cleansing our spirit, and how nutritionized we come when we eat a little bit of corn, we eat a little bit of rice or a little bit of fish, but how warming it is when we hug each other. And that's what you call a unity of strength. And listening to that old man, he partied from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 1:30 in the evening and didn't have a nap. His grandson is telling me that he got up at 7 a.m. and Terry was going to drive 3 hours to see his other brother. And Don got up and says, well, I'll go for a ride with you. And I thought, geez, that's pretty. I hope I'm like that when I'm 70, let alone 100. And I say that to each and every one of us, is that there's such a uniqueness here within the Chippewas as a Sioux tribe that a lot of people don't feel, but I see it and live it every day. And when I visit elders from this community, they have a lot of medicine. And we have to embrace that because it's not going to be here maybe tomorrow. So take advantage of those storytellers. A deaf man or a deaf human being hears spirit. A blind man, a blind human being sees spirit. Someone paralyzed feels spirit. we who can see, we can hear, and we who are mobilized, sometimes we miss Spirit. I just want to share that with us. Naya, naya, bege, naya, migo, naya. Anige, naya, naya, mage, nige, naya, mage, ninanum dageyam. Nanu nimge, ninani bwegenduyam. Ninani bundage ya nege, nani bundage neya. Ninani bwene nikini ya nege. Kini ya ne, ninani bwege mabindage. Neya benonuna ne, neya megeya neya, neya bege ne nani bwegeya. Nani bwege ne nunda ne mabege neya. Neya beya ne nishna me nege. Mishkone nindage ne yabeya ne ganishna mene yam. Zagaya ne maminda ne panege ne negite ya ne geyam. Pane ya ne gete ya ne minito. For forever will ever love old Spirit. And kiniyagek age mishnunde, mamayan mishkunagabnegek is for everybody who's ever standing strong for Spirit. Miigwech.
Miigwech, thank you. Okay, the next item that we're on is membership participation. So as members of the Sioux Tribe of Chippewa Indians, you have the right to address your board of directors, and we give you this opportunity to address us. So Sheila, if you could put your hand up. Other Sheila. Sheila Kibble. Yeah, so if you guys want to talk to us, Sheila has some membership participation forms. Some of them we handle in open session, some of them we handle in closed. It's up to my discretion. So to start though, we're going to handle Jackie Minton, and she's going to be closed. So if you're not Jackie Minton or part of the group that she brought here, you guys, if I could respectfully ask you guys to wait outside the room, and we'll grab you guys when we're finished. I appreciate it.
Good evening. Okay, I have three things I'd like to bring up. First of all, I would like to get a report on how Tanglewood did in 2025. Going into the 2026 season, I don't hear any scuttlebutt about them closing or anything, so I'm happy to hear that. But I would like to know how they did last year. The other question I have is, why are so many sessions in the workshop being closed? From what I understand from the topics that I've read, and I don't have them in front of me, there's nothing prioritized or proprietary about some of that stuff. You know, I think as members, we deserve to know what's going on with our health center. We deserve to know what's going on with our casino. We're not privy to those reports. I don't know how we're going to get that information, but I feel that we deserve to know what's going on with our entities and where our money's coming from and where it's going to. Excuse me. The other thing I'd like to mention again, as I did during the workshop, is I see four board members that are not here present. They're on Zoom. I do not see their faces. I request that they turn on their Zoom cameras so the membership president in this building can see that their members are working for them. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. All right, next up, Ron and Sarah Gordon.
All right. Thank you for your, oh, okay. Thank you for your time tonight. We are here hoping for the support of the board for the agenda item, the resolution for the snowmobile trail McKeldin property. We have been in front of the board before regarding this, and we were really hoping that tonight we can wrap up this nearly 5-year project that I've been working on, and you guys are the final piece of that puzzle, so I'm really hoping for your support tonight. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you both. All right, so that concludes all the membership forms that we have, so then we'll move on to minutes. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the minutes from 2/17 of 26.
Motion.
All right, motion by Kim, support by Isaac. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries and those minutes are adopted. Without objection, we will hear Helen Wilkins' resolutions first. She has her son's hockey banquet to go to, and she'd like to get out of here somewhat on time. Any objections? Okay, hearing no objections, we will cover residential land lease cancellation, Rittenhouse first.
Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby authorizes its tribal chairman and treasurer to execute this lease cancellation in the land being described as, followed by land description. Be it finally resolved, the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby requests the Bureau of Indian Affairs to cancel lease number 469-20005-40252, along with any modifications or assignments pursuant to applicable law and regulations.
Motion by Isaac and support by Larry. Helen?
Helen Wilkins, Director of Commercial Real Estate for Sioux Tribe. This resolution is for authorization of the tribal chairman and treasurer to execute the lease cancellation for a property in Kinchelo. This has been requested by the personal representative of the family of Rittenhouse. We do have, following this, another resolution, and I respectfully request this to be approved.
I appreciate it. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries. That brings us to your next resolution, which is residential land lease, Joshua French.
Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby authorizes the tribal chairman and the treasurer to execute a residential land lease for the land located at Kinchelo, Michigan, to Joshua French, the land being described as, land description. Be it finally resolved, the residential land lease is in furtherance of a housing program operated in the promotion of the public purpose, and the negotiated rental amount has been determined to be in the best interest of the tribe and its people, and valuation in accordance with 25 CFR 162.320 is hereby waived.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Helen?
This resolution is for authorization for the tribal chairman and treasurer to execute a new residential land lease for the same property from the previous resolution. This has been requested by Joshua French, the tribal member. And I and my department agree with this land lease.
Okay, appreciate that. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries. Have a good night, Helen.
Guys.
All right, so that brings us to the top of the agenda. We will cover ACFS USDA establish FY26 budget.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 budget for USDA with federal USDA revenue of $20,000, no effect on tribal support.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Jamie?
Lenny Boujou, Jamie Baran, ACFS Director. Before you tonight, respectfully requesting approval to establish a fiscal year 2026 budget for our USDA Nutrition Education Grant. These are funds that were remaining from a prior year.
Thank you. Any discussion from the board? And as we mentioned earlier, we're going to use these funds to try to figure out workshops to help tribal members learn different recipes with the ingredients that they receive from the Commod office.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, seeing no hands going up, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Miigwech.
The next resolution is Health ARPA Maintenance FY26 Budget Mod.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 budget modification to ARPA Maintenance and Improvements for a reallocation of expenses to purchase property. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 budget modification to COVID Services, PRC, for a reallocation of expenses to renovate the newly purchased property.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Joel?
Good evening, everyone. Joel Lumpson, Assistant Health Director. Yes, essentially, what we're doing with these two budget mods in this resolution is to realign the funding within the budget to be able to appropriately spend the money on the potential renovation of the Roy property during the completion of the annex project at the Sioux Tribe Health Center site.
Very good. Thank you, Joel. Any questions, comments from the board? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please.
Kimberly Gravel.
Yes.
Kimberly Hampton.
Yes.
Lana.
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Larry.
Yes.
Kimberly Lee.
Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. The next resolution is Health Emergency Prep FY26 Budget Mods.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 budget modification to emergency preparedness for an increase of State of Michigan revenue of $196,018 and a decrease in the transfer in of funds from third-party revenue, $55,879.05. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 budget modification to third-party revenue to decrease the transfer out of funds to emergency preparedness by $55,879.05.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Joel?
I believe Heather's on, Heather Kerfoot.
Oh, Heather, are you going to be reporting on this one?
Yeah, I can report on this one. So our emergency preparedness grant received special projects funding. And so this funding will help support emergency preparedness processes throughout all of the sites. So there's different projects we're working on, including surveillance cameras for here at the Sioux Tribe Health Center and Shadow and Haven. And then all of the other sites are going to receive enhanced preparedness, including maps, evacuation routes. Yeah, there's just a lot of different things going on that we're really excited about.
Okay, appreciate that. Any questions, comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Rob.
Yes.
Kimberly Lee.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Kimberly Gravel.
Yes.
Kimberly Hampton.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Lana,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next resolution is Health Admin FY26 Budget Mods.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 budget modification to Health Center Administration, a decrease in the transfer in of funds from third-party revenue, $118,796.48. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 budget modification to third-party revenue to decrease the transfer out of funds to Health Center Administration by $118,796.48.
Motion by Isaac. Support by Sean. Go ahead.
Good evening, Jackie McLean, Healthcare Administrator for the Health Division. This budget mod brings some of the expenses in line with actuals. There's several personnel changes, mainly changing the Chief Financial Officer vacant position to a comptroller. This budget mod also aligns with Joel's emergency preparedness, as there's an employee that's split. And yeah, it's a decrease in the transfer out of third-party revenue.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any discussion from the board? Lana?
Yeah, we talked about this at length this afternoon in closed session, had some, a bit of discussion on it. I won't be supporting it. I do believe truly that, I'm going to abstain. I do believe truly that our health division budget is $70 million for 2026. And I do believe that would need a CFO position, not just a comptroller. So that's where my non-support is. I believe that level of a budget would need something other than a comptroller. So I wanted to state that out so that stuff's not made up. So, thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any more hands up, so I will state that if this becomes a tie and I get the rare opportunity to vote, I will be in support of it. Our health CEO is supportive of a comptroller instead of a CFO. One of the big reasons is that we had the CFO position posted for an extended period of time and we didn't get any applicants that we were really satisfied with. It's difficult to get people of special niches to come work in such a rural location. Also, there's budget factors that play into this as well. So if you were to hire a CFO at the max and a comptroller at the max, you'd be looking at over $100,000 difference between the two positions. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go with the CEO's recommendation, and it's no disrespect to Lana. So I don't see any more hands up, so a roll call, please.
Bridget,
No.
Aaron,
Yes.
Larry,
No.
Kimberly Lee,
No.
Michael,
Yes.
Kimberly Gravel,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Tyler,
No.
Kimberly Hampton,
No.
Lana,
No.
Isaac,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Is it 6-6?
yes.
All right, so there's that rare occasion. I am going to vote yes in support of this. So the next resolution is FY26 Budget Document 002, Schedule B Budgets.
Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 Budget Document 002 totaling $11,949,456, of which $517,505 comes from tribal support.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Jen?
Good evening, Jen Claire from the Budget Department. Schedule B budgets are budgets that started in September or October of '25 and will end in '26 of this year. And we're seeking approval of, there's 42 budgets in this document.
Okay, any questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Larry,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Kimberly Hampton,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Kimberly Gravel,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Kimberly Lee,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Lana,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next resolution is FY26 Budget Document 003, Schedule C Budgets.
Now therefore it be resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 Budget Document 003 totaling $98,196,968, of which $19,590,711 comes from tribal support.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Jen?
Schedule C budgets operate January through December, and there are currently 142 cost centers in this document that we're seeking approval for.
Appreciate it. Any questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Lana,
Yes.
Rob,
He didn't say anything yet.
Michael,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Kimberly Lee,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Aaron, Isaac.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Isaac
I'm
was
not
yes.
muted.
Kimberly Hampton,
Yes.
Kimberly Gravel,
Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next resolution is FY26 Governmental Capital Expenditures.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians hereby approves the FY 2026 governmental capital expenditure budget for a total of $2,001,284, of which $1,008,284 will come from tribal support.
Support.
Motion by Isaac and support by Larry. Jen?
Good evening again. This is CapEx we presented just a little bit ago. It's for buildings, construction, and IT and security. And if there's additional questions needed, I think we've answered everything so far.
Yep, we've workshopped each one of these, sometimes multiple times. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Isaac,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Kimberly Gravel,
Yes.
Lana,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Kimberly Hampton,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Kimberly Lee,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Without objection, I would like to skip the next two resolutions, just consider it due to lack of support. We only needed these two resolutions on the agenda if two previous resolutions hadn't passed, and they did pass, so they're no longer necessary. Any objection? Okay, so we will skip and let the following resolutions die due to lack of support. They'd be titled CFR Government FY26 Schedule B, No Health Division, and CFR Governmental FY26 Schedule C Budgets, January to December. Both resolutions are no longer needed and die due to lack of support, which brings us to CFR FY27, April to March.
Now therefore it be resolved that the Board of Directors approves continuing funding for the below cost centers for fiscal year 2027 at their 2026 spending levels for a period not to exceed June 30th, 2026, 2721 NSIP grant, 2724 Title VI, 2651 SYEP Administration, 2671 SYEP, 2920 Junior Police Academy, 11669 Boreal Forest.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Jen?
Good evening again. This resolution will just seek the approval for these 6 cost centers that start April 1st since we have not had time to workshop these with the Board of Directors.
Thank you. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Tyler,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Kimberly Gravel,
Yes.
Lana,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Kimberly Lee,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Kimberly Hampton.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Have a good night. Next resolution is NRD Climate Solutions Program.
Now therefore be resolved, the Sioux Tribe Board of Directors authorizes the Natural Resources Division to submit a funding proposal to AFP for up to $1 million to enhance tribal stewardship across the 1836 ceded territory. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors hereby authorizes and approves the chairman of the tribe or their designee to execute all documents, contracts, and subcontracts as may be necessary and appropriate to carry out the terms, conditions, and intent of this resolution.
Motion by, who made it? All right, Isaac, support by Larry. Go ahead, Danny.
Hi, everyone. Danny Fagan, Director for the Natural Resources Division. Again, we're just requesting approval from the Board of Directors to apply to the Allen Family Philanthropies Advancing Natural Climate Solutions Program. We would like to submit a grant proposal for up to $1 million to cover 2 years of work to engage in decision-making processes across the 1836 ceded territory.
Thank you, Danny. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. The next resolution is authorizing amicus brief in treaty fishing case.
Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of Directors hereby authorize and direct the drafting and filing of an amicus brief on behalf of Sioux Tribe of Chippewa Indians in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Walter Joseph Caswell. Be it finally resolved that the Board hereby authorizes and approves the chairperson or his designee to execute any and all documents as may be necessary and appropriate to carry out the terms, conditions, and intent of this resolution.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Ryan?
Yeah, this is a case that's been going on multiple years at the state court level. It's pending appeal at the State Supreme Court of Michigan, and we believe filing an amicus brief to help guide the court on the proper framework to determine whether a tribe has treaty rights and what that means in conjunction with the federal case, U.S. v. Michigan, would be advantageous to defending long-term our tribe's treaty rights.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries. The next resolution is rescind Resolution 2024-54, waiver, American wagering.
Now, therefore, be resolved that the Board of Directors hereby rescinds Tribal Resolution 2024-54, authorization and waiver of sovereign immunity and consent to waiver of tribal court jurisdiction for third amended and restated online gaming and sports betting agreement and assignment and consent agreement with American Wagering, Inc. Be it finally resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately.
Motion.
Motion by Tyler, support by Larry. Ryan?
Yeah, this is part of multiple resolutions we've recently brought in front of the board that is moving the iGaming license from the tribal government to Kuwaitan Casinos Gaming Authority. The tribal government did a limited waiver for Caesars, our online gaming partner, to enter into this agreement with the iGaming license. Kuwaitan Casinos Gaming Authority has since done their own waiver as we've transferred the license over to the casinos, and now we can rescind the government waiver, so all legal liability, if any should arise, would be solely with Kuwaitan Gaming Authority, not with the Sioux Tribe as a whole.
Thank you, Ryan. Board questions, comments? Start with Aaron.
Yeah, so I asked this question earlier, but I want the benefit of the members to hear the response. Is online, there's a concerted effort to try to, and coordinated effort to try to get board members to vote against this by claiming that somehow structuring it under the Gaming Authority will diminish the ability for us to fund programs and services. I asked the rhetorical question of General Legal Counsel, who is the Gaming Authority? The Gaming Authority is also the Sioux Tribe Board of Directors. And so it's a misnomer, and it's just a false accusation that the tribal board will not be able to direct through the Gaming Authority, the priorities for funding for programs and services. So, you know, it's interesting when people play that game and try to fearmonger, and then it's to me it's disheartening when board members either don't understand that they will continue to have the control over where those funds go, or they just play the political game with those people who are trying to influence how they vote. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands, so we'll vote. Those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those abstaining, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. The next resolution is protecting tribal artisans from AI.
Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Directors hereby prohibits the use of AI in official tribal government communications and outreach to include but not be limited to official advertisements, flyers, social media posts, videos, or other similar media. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors hereby prohibits the Board of Directors members to use of AI in any official communications and outreach on behalf of the tribal government to include but not be limited to official advertisements, flyers, social media posts, videos, or other similar media. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors hereby directs the Tribal Legal Department to bring forth proposed code changes to codify AI protections for Sioux Tribe artisans. Be it finally resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately.
Motion.
Motion by Tyler and support by Larry. Tyler, you sponsored this if you'd like to speak first.
Yeah, so this issue's been brought to me by a lot of our younger tribal members that are concerned about the aggressive tactics of AI and the lack of accountability and policy around it. You know, if the U.S. government isn't going to act, I think us as a tribe should act at least, the very least, to protect our tribal artisans. Over the past several months, you know, I know some people are going to use it for wordsmithing and stuff like that. That's not really what I'm intending here. What I'm intending here is to protect the integrity of a Native American artwork, and seeing decals and artwork being put up across social media, across some of our communities, and across some of our divisions has been growing concern for some of our youth and even some of our artisans in our communities. So this is why this policy is coming forward, hoping that the tribal code that the legal department brings forth in the coming months will help address some of that, at the very least to protect our tribal artisans. The American Indian Arts and Craft Act, that exists for a reason. Granted, yes, it's for like native created art. But it seems like a lot of this stuff is being passed off now as native created when it is absolutely not. So I do want to protect those in our communities. If the tribe is going to use artwork as something that represents us, we should be paying our community members that do the artwork. That's why this is coming forward. I'm hoping it passes and turns into a policy. But these things need to be addressed nationwide, and at the very least, we can do it with the Sioux tribe, starting by protecting our artisans.
Okay, any questions, comments? Isaac.
Hey, Ryan, question for you. Does this prohibit the use from advertisements using AI? So if somebody posts on the website and they use AI to do a research, right? And they use that information they receive from AI and they post that, can that person get in trouble? It sure sounds like it to me.
Yeah, I believe the intent, and I want to speak for Tyler, is more towards AI art.
It doesn't say
So
that.
you could modify the therefore be resolved to say use of
AI
AI
and
art.
official tribal government communications. So that's everything that the government does.
Correct. The way this is worded is not strictly just for art. So if we're using AI to create flyers, advertisements, et cetera, those would be prohibited, correct?
So if I could chime in real quick, Isaac.
So is that a freedom of information though? Aren't we curtailing that?
So if I may, I completely support, you know, the artist side of this things, but if we're being honest, like our administration uses AI pretty frequently. Like it's viewed as like a communications tool right now, probably similar to how spell check used to be used. So I can tell you right now, with the health division transitioning to next gen, which is our EHR, progress notes utilize AI so providers can get them in quicker, more timely, which is advantageous because there's less of a chance that a provider won't submit that note, and then you won't miss billing. I do know that some of our executives use AI for their executive level reports, but the part I'm mostly wondering about is it prohibits board members from using AI in any capacity, like social media posts and things like that. How would we enforce that, Ryan? How could someone tell, like an Isaac McKechnie, what he can or can't do on his private social media page if he lives off the reservation and doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of the Sioux tribe?
Yeah, so this would be only limited to, like, if the board authorized, well, not to pick on you, Isaac, authorized Isaac to do a post on Facebook, and then he used AI to generate that post. That's what this would prohibit. If it's his own personal capacity that he's doing a post using AI to promote something unofficially for the tribe, he's just trying to get out to his constituents, this wouldn't prohibit that. It would just be like the board directed one of you all to do an official post, or directed a department to do an official post, and then you use AI. That's what it's intended to prohibit.
Okay, that answers my question. Okay, anyone else? Yeah. Okay, then we shall vote. Oh, I'm sorry, I got a couple hands up online. Yeah, I see it. So I'll do Rob, then Aaron.
All right.
So I see it as a tool, but I understand the intent of the resolution is to protect Native artists. I would be more in favor of developing a process to where authentic Native American artists and their art can be authenticated, and then maybe we make a list of those that we prefer staff to use in certain situations. But we're a fast-moving tribe, and a lot of flyers need to be made at all times. And I don't want to govern by prohibiting people from using their free will to do what works best for them. At the same time, I understand the intent is to protect Native American art, so I would, like I said, be more in favor of developing a process to verify authentic Native American art, and then encourage people to use that, or to make sure that it's verified and they're using authentic Native American art. But I'm never going to govern by prohibiting people from utilizing their free will like that. So I won't support this tonight, but if the vice chair would like to, if this doesn't pass, develop a process to protect artists, and develop an authentication process that we could publish so people know that they're using authentic Native American art when they want to, I will support that.
Okay, Aaron.
I would like to motion to amend to limit the prohibition to the use by our employees, our team members, the use of AI-generated American Indian art.
So it sounds like your motion to amend narrows the focus of this resolution just to focus on artwork and Native American artisans, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, do we have a second? All right, so we have a motion and support to amend this resolution. Any discussion on the amendment? Tyler?
I'll just note that legal drew this up, so it was ultimately the intent to focus on Native American art.
Okay.
So I'm supportive of the amendment.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll vote on the amendment. Those in support signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries, so that's just the amendment. We're back on the main resolution now. Any further discussion? Lana?
Yeah, I don't do it often, but I just want to give a shout out to Tyler. I just think this strengthens our position to protect Native American artists. We can read a lot into it, but, I see some things on Facebook that are just a mocking kind of way. And here, this will, like I said, I was here when we passed our own resolution that we would only we'd protect Native American artists at our powwows, and only those could, with a federally recognized card, could have vendor booths or trader booths at the powwow. So I think that this is a step up. I whispered over to Tyler if, are you okay with that? And you know what he said? He said, it's a start. It's a start. So that's a good thing. This is meant to be a good thing. I commend you for doing it. It protects our Native American people and artists. And I remember back in the day when we did pass it at our own level for our powwows, it was a good thing. So I think this is a good thing, and I just wanted to say that.
Rob?
So I'm happy that amendment just passed, because now that it's narrowed to just the art, I will support it, because it's essentially the same thing that I just suggested. My only question is, can we work to put together some kind of a verification process and a list, or maybe even a gallery of authentic art from our people? That way, when our staff does want to use it, it's readily available to them, and they know that they're selecting things that are authenticated. I think that we need to do that as a process, and definitely find some way to make that art available to them when they want to use it.
Hey, Rob,
Noted.
This is Ryan. I was just going to say, if you guys want, so this does mandate, if it passes, for the legal department to create a code. We could also work on the process that Rob is bringing up at the same time. They could go hand in hand with that. So.
All right, appreciate that. So I don't see any more
Thanks,
hands
Ryan.
up, so let's vote on this. Those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those abstaining, motion carries. Thank you. The next resolution, approval for snowmobile trail on Keldon property.
Now therefore be resolved that the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians Board of Directors hereby authorizes the Director of Commercial Real Estate and Property Management to work with both the BIA and La Chena I can never pronounce it.
Les Chenaux.
Yes. Snowmobile Club on behalf of the tribe to get any necessary right-of-way or easement in place for a snowmobile trail on the Keldon property. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors hereby authorizes the tribal chairman and tribal treasurer to execute any and all documents that may be necessary to accomplish the intent of this resolution.
Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Isaac, you want to speak?
Yeah, so the Gordons they spoke earlier, they're trying to get a snowmobile trail that's going from probably Pickford, just outside of Pickford, across a state property and a piece of a property, so the trail wouldn't be very long across our property, so they can get business to their restaurant, so.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. They've been working on this project for several years. I believe they have an easement from the DNR because the neighboring property with Keldon is property that belongs to the state of Michigan. This is a narrow property, so it would be a matter of several hundred yards, but not miles or anything like that. And my support, I already stated, was contingent on the property is taken care of, that we get some signage up. That way we can tell snowmobilers where they're allowed, where they're not allowed, along with the snowmobile fence. So as long as they take care of it, I'll continue supporting it, but if they trash it, there could be a resolution rescinding this, essentially, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Any more questions, comments? Isaac?
Hey, also, Sarah, Ron, if this passes, we want you to work with Danny about the snow fence, okay? Thank you.
All right, guys. I don't see any more hands up. Those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion carries. Nice job, guys. All right, last resolution for this evening, hotel tax revenue to tribal land claims / culture.
Now therefore be resolved that beginning, effective date, hotel use tax revenue collected by the tribe shall be allocated as follows. 1, 3% of hotel tax revenue collected shall be deposited into the Tribal Lands Claim Fund to support land claim-related purposes and other authorized uses of that fund as determined by the board and applicable tribal law / policy. 2, 2.5% of hotel tax revenue collected shall be distributed to the Culture Department, restricted for use solely to enhance educational and cultural purposes, including but not limited to cultural, educational, programming, materials, events, outreach, curriculum, language, culture preservation initiatives, and related community activities consistent with departmental plans and tribal priorities. Be it further resolved that these allocations shall be calculated on a monthly / quarterly basis based on hotel tax revenue actually collected during the applicable period and transferred no later than X days following the close of each period. Be it further resolved that the Tribal Tax Code, Chapter 43, Section 805, Distribution of Tax Proceeds as follows. 43.805, Distribution of Tax Proceeds. The Tax Commission shall remit to the tribe all hotel use tax proceeds from hotels owned by the tribe which are located within a 1/4 mile radius of a licensed gaming establishment located on tribal and trust lands, and the tribe shall transfer such use proceeds into the general fund. The Tax Commission shall remit to the tribe all hotel use proceeds from hotels which are not owned by the tribe or are not located within a 1/4 mile radius of a licensed gaming establishment located on tribal and trust lands, and the tribe shall consolidate such proceeds quarterly, and the percentage of the proceeds retained by the tribe under the tax agreement shall be transferred into the general fund. The total tax proceeds transferred to the general fund under this section shall be allocated as follows. 1, 3% shall be deposited into the tribal land claim fund to support land claim-related purposes and other authorized uses of that fund as determined by the board and applicable tribal law policy. 2, 2.5% shall be distributed to the Culture Department, restricted for use solely to enhance educational and cultural purposes, including but not limited to cultural education, programming, materials, events, outreach, curriculum, language/culture preservation initiatives, and related community activities consistent with departmental plans and tribal priorities. Be it further resolved that the Finance Department is directed to establish and maintain the necessary accounting codes to ensure the 3% deposit to the Lands Claim Fund and the 2% restricted distribution to the Culture Department are tracked separately and reported transparently. Be it further resolved that the Culture Department shall provide a quarterly summary report to the board identifying expenditures made with a 2.5% allocation, including categories, totals, and a brief description of cultural educational outcomes. Be it finally resolved that the board chairperson or designee is authorized to take all administrative actions necessary to implement this resolution, and this resolution shall take date on effective date.
Motion.
All right, motion by Isaac, support by Rob. So with that, without objection, I recommend that we amend every reference of 2.5% to 2%. I talked to Isaac and he said it's a typo. So are there any objections to that? So it would just change every reference of 2.5% to 2%. Okay, hearing no objection, we'll amend it to reflect that. So Isaac, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So I put this on the agenda, and the reason is currently there's 5% that goes into cultural enhancement, and that's divvied up 1% to each unit. There is no mechanisms in place which controls that fund, so each unit can pretty much spend at will. There's no reporting back to the board, this board, and the other big thing that I don't see how we can get away with is I don't know how individual board members can expend tribal funds outside of the board meeting. The other thing is we have a obligation to pay back a loan that we took some money, borrowed some money from the Elder Fund, and this is a good opportunity to start paying that back, so.
Okay, Kim Lee.
I agree. We definitely need to start putting money back into that lands claims fund. However, the cost of all of our units suffering, that's a political foul in my opinion. So in the last 6 months, Unit 2, here's just what I've pulled up from recent, what we've worked on with cultural enhancement dollars, the beautiful Fire Lodge artwork, Kids Fish Co-op, Nobbin Elders, requesting funding for shadow boxes for Native American Nobbin family history, shed for YEA storage, Red Yard Area Schools powwow. They requested that today. Isaac said, hey, why don't we use cultural enhancement dollars? I think that's a great idea. Orange Shirt Day, Ghost Feast, and as well as planning the gathering in Lansing for members that we were all talking about. So I'd be happy to workshop this further, develop a policy, whatever we need to do, if we need to bring everything we spend back to this table, I'm okay with that. We do have to provide receipts and justification, but I am more than okay with bringing that back to this table if that's what it requires to keep these funds in our unit and make sure that our units are taken care of. So, and to me, anytime our people gather and spend time together is considered cultural. So it's really hard for me not to consider what we're all doing within our units, cultural enhancement. So I'm going to motion to table this.
Okay, so there's a motion to table. Is there a second? All right, so there's a motion and support to table this. We'll start with roll call because motion to table suspends debate.
Lana,
Yes.
Rob,
No.
Michael,
Yes.
Larry,
No.
Sean,
Yes.
Kimberly Lee,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Aaron,
No.
Isaac,
Absolutely not, and the people watching, I hope they reach out to their unit directors.
Isaac, that's enough.
Kimberly Hampton,
Yes.
Kimberly Gravel,
Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
Okay, motion to table successfully passes, so that concludes all the resolutions that we have for this evening. So let's move down to new business. The first item is committee appointments / resignations. Any opposition to handling these all together? Okay. Sean? What's your question?
Another gentleman that actually put his paperwork in to be a unit representative down there, and I don't see it here, and I was just wondering the correct process, if Katie didn't get it to us, or what happened there.
Lana can answer that.
If you're referencing John, there was some confusion on what seats were actually available, and Katie and I are working on that, so you should see something coming back March 24th at your next meeting. Yep.
So there's another seat that's going to be open, I take it?
Yeah, he was going for a regular seat, and there's only an alternate open.
Okay.
So
Okay.
she was getting a hold of him.
You satisfied with that, Sean? Okay. All right, so I didn't see any objections to handling these all together, so I would like to entertain a motion for the following items, just hold up on it. So it would be a motion to accept the resignation of Bernard Byron from the Elder Subcommittee Unit 1, to accept the resignation of Del Powers from the Elder Subcommittee Unit 3, to accept the appointment of Carol Colgrove, the Elder Subcommittee Unit 3, to accept the appointment of Phyllis Smith to the Elder Subcommittee Unit 4, and to accept the resignation of Del Powers from the Elder Advisory Committee. Motion from Isaac, support by Larry. Any discussion on any of this? Hearing no discussion, those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those abstaining, motion carries. Brings us to board concerns. Does anyone want to talk about these openly? Otherwise, you can submit your forms to Lana, and then she can work on getting you guys answers. Sean?
I know Wendy Hoffman brought forward before about a transportation plan here in the UP, and I think we bought 5 new vehicles that I know of, and I'm wondering where that plan is at. I've never seen no application or job posting for the drivers, or just wondering where that was at. Several members asked me about it.
Okay, Lana can help you work on getting an update on that. Okay, any others? All right, hearing none, I'd like to entertain.
I have one.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Rob.
Yep. Sorry, I thought my hand was up.
No, you're good, you're good.
I would like to request that we schedule a workshop on the Freedom of Information Act and how members receive that information. And then also, I would like to request that members could give input either at the beginning or the end of that workshop.
Okay, thank you. And for the board's information, I did have a resolution that I was going to schedule for next meeting. It was in the event that Isaac's resolution didn't pass. It pertains to FOIA and cultural enhancement. So right now, if you make a FOIA request, they'll tell you how much is in the coffers, what was spent, but they won't tell you how much individual projects cost. And that's been something that's been brought up by quite a few members. I don't know if Isaac's resolution will pass, but if it doesn't, that will be up on deck. So, Kim? Okay, go ahead, Kim.
Okay, so I'm to the point where I'm not really sure what to do on this, so this is why it has to go through something more official than just emailing. This pertains to ACFS, in-home caregiver, non-relative payments. So currently, there's no background check process for childcare assistance pertaining to in-home caregiver, non-relative. So a family reached out to me and said they had applied for this program back in October. So the caregiver is a non-relative, but will be providing care in the children's home. They were given the packet, they were given all the stuff they had to go do, they went to go get the background check, everything was turned in, then they were told, hold up, that background check won't work. They're like, what do you mean? Well, because you're not a relative, you're a non-relative, it has to go through a different code and a different system. So they were like, okay, so then they were patient, and they didn't even bring this up to me until just recently. They've been through the ringer, back and forth, to where they finally were told, well, there's no process in place for if you're a non-relative. They said, well, what do you mean, like you have this program? They said it had been 3 years since there was a non-relative who had applied for help, so that's why there's no process. So because of a failure in our ACFS in-home caregiver non-relative process, this family has been sitting since October, waiting, and still no answers. And they are told almost every day still, up until today still, that the program's waiting to hear back from their funder. They don't have any really answers for them. Then they were told today that they could go apply to be a relative caregiver through MDHHS. And I said, I understand that. However, if they do, they're not gonna get back pay from October now. And I got that's correct. That is correct. But this family is in financial tires now, sitting here waiting, and have been providing care when they were told to go ahead. So I feel like this issue needs to be rectified for both families, but obviously this should never have been an issue. I mean, this is a process that just didn't exist. So it needs to be fixed before some other family gets into the same situation. That's all.
Okay, Jess, can you follow up with Jamie on that, please? Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting then. I have a motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Those in support signify by saying aye. Those opposed, those abstaining, motion carries, and I will see everyone next Tuesday.